Chapter 1266. Zhang Feng's passionate speech finally made these bastards accept this thing. Although they were not the most suitable people in terms of talent, their nature, their family background, and their relationship with Zhang Feng, they were the most suitable candidates. As for Hao Chujun and Lai Ji, although they seemed to be the best candidates for now, they would all be first-class generals and ministers in the future. He did not dare to interfere in changing their course of history. Just like Gao Can, these guys all had their own destinies. He had no way to control them. In the end, Zhang Feng was still waiting for 3 years later, when all of them would be able to pass the Grand Scholar exam. That would be the time for them to truly amaze the world. At that time, even if he did not become a Jinsher, so what? At that time, with the people he trained, wouldn't the Emperor, Lao Tzu, beg him to become an official? Most importantly, as long as he trained Li Gan and the other guys and turned them into technological talents, not to mention becoming an official, even the great scholars of the imperial court would have to be respectful to them. If that was the case as their master, would he not benefit? Under such exciting fantasies and the ravages of reality, Zhang Feng's day finally came to an end. The moment the night watchman sounded, Zhang Feng turned and ran. Not even a bit of homework was left behind. This undoubtedly made them feel strange and unusual. Once he got home, Zhang Feng sprawled on the chair and let Jingshu limp as she massaged his shoulders. Seeing that Jingshu was uncomfortable, Zhang Feng felt a little embarrassed and wanted her to sit down. However, Jingshu stubbornly refused to let other women massage Zhang Feng's shoulders. She was so angry that Steamed Bun pouted and pointed at Zhang Feng and called him a bad person. She no longer called him Brother Feng Zi. After Zhang Feng recovered, Jingshu sat beside Zhang Feng with difficulty and asked curiously, "I've seen Mr. Zihuai and the others teach before, but I've never seen them like you. What did you do? Why are you so tired?" Zhang Feng was extremely embarrassed. In terms of writing, he was not as good as these big shots. In terms of teaching and educating people, he was even more inferior. In the end, he could only attribute it to these guys being two troublemakers. Hearing this, Jingshu covered her mouth and snickered. However, it seemed that the snicker pulled at the sore spot, and Jingshu's face turned pale in pain. Zhang Feng felt a little distressed. He waved his hand and carried Jingshu into the bedroom. However, at the door of his study, Gao Can stood there like a block of wood. Zhang Feng wanted to talk to Jingshu privately in the bedroom, but there was a large third wheel at the door. How could he say that? He had to go out and get rid of Gao Can first. As soon as he went out, Zhang Feng waved at Gao Can and said, "Didn't Jia Daoren tell you to go to Jiangnan? Why are you still here?" Gao Can said in a muffled voice, "Waiting for you." "Waiting for me for what? Give the order." "But didn't I already tell Jia Daoren? I don't trust him. I only listen to my teacher's orders." Zhang Feng wanted to curse. However, although Gao Can's character was a little stubborn, it was his character, loyalty. This was something that could not be bought and could not be learned. Zhang Feng did not want Gao Can to abandon this obsession that accompanied him to become the top warlord of the Tang dynasty in the future. He just patted him on the shoulder and said, "Since you said so, then I will give you 3 orders. You must remember these 3 orders in your heart and never forget them for the rest of your life." Plop. Hearing this, Gao Can instantly knelt on one knee on the ground. "Teacher, please enlighten me." Zhang Feng was speechless. But what could he say at this time? He just sighed and said, "The first order is that there are things that a general can and can't do outside. Military orders are important, but when you make a decision, you must not hesitate." "I will remember it." Gao Can was stunned. Zhang Feng didn't know if Gao Can could understand it. At the very least, he didn't understand it. His sentence was made up randomly, but he understood the general meaning. As for Gao Can, with his IQ, Zhang Feng didn't expect him to understand it now, but at the very least, as long as he could remember it, Zhang Feng could guarantee his achievements in this lifetime. At the very least, there wouldn't be any problems with his character. Then Zhang Feng said, "The second order is that you must know right from wrong and do not assert. Leave a way out for yourself in everything. Do not act until you are 30. This time, Gao Can was really dumbfounded. Zhang Feng did not expect him to understand now. He said again, "The third order is that water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize it. As long as you always remember these 3 sentences, you will not go astray on the road of military affairs." Although Gao Can really did not understand, he believed that sooner or later he would understand it. Moreover, Zhang Feng had explained it to him so seriously. He also understood what Zhang Feng meant. At this time, Gao Can was so emotional that he almost cried. His face was flushed. Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly helped him up and said, "That's enough, man. Remember one more sentence in the future. Don't cry like a woman. If you have the ability, use your fists to talk. If you don't, admit defeat and run, understand?" This time, Gao Can really understood. He nodded excitedly. Zhang Feng then waved his hand and said, "Go. Remember, if anyone dares to hit my wife, you's men, beat them to death. If they die, ask them to come and settle the score with Lao Tzu. If they dare to ask, tell me. Whoever dares to touch my people, even if they are thousands of miles away, I, Zhang Feng, will kill them." Chapter 1267. In fact, Jing Shu had been eavesdropping through the crack of the door. She didn't even notice when Zhang Feng suddenly opened the door. She stumbled and fell into Zhang Feng's arms. Zhang Feng looked at Jing Shu's red face and couldn't help kissing her. "But, are you jealous?" Jing Shu naturally didn't know what jealousy meant. She nodded and said, "I ate some at night. Prince Zhang, can you still smell it now?" After being snubbed, Zhang Feng helped Jing Shu to sit on the bed. Jing Shu leaned in Zhang Feng's arms and hugged Zhang Feng's neck tightly. When her long eyelashes fluttered, Zhang Feng almost couldn't hold back. She couldn't help but quickly change her mind and asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about what Prince Zhang said just now." "Which sentence?" "Even if he is thousands of miles away, he will be killed. Is this just for sister you, Zhang Feng laughed and took Jing Shu into his arms. "Little fool, I'm talking about all of you. All of you, 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 all of you that I care about." This was his wealth in the Tang dynasty. Without them, Zhang Feng couldn't believe what his present or future would be like. This made Zhang Feng cherish everything he had now even more. After all, Zhang Feng really didn't have any hope of going back. In the Tang dynasty, he had to manage everything, a family, a business. In this barren land, he had created an era that belonged to him, Zhang Feng. Such an achievement was at least much better than working from 9 to 5 in the future. Most importantly, he felt a sense of dependence here that he had never felt before. The indifference of the society in the future was so cold that it made Zhang Feng feel suffocated. Cheating, houses, cars, and so on were all mountains. But here, everything was gone. He could only do as he pleased. He didn't want to be a high-ranking official, but he wanted to be able to accompany the people he liked and those who loved him. That was enough. However, the prerequisite for this was that he had to have power. If he didn't have power, sooner or later, he would be killed by jealousy in the Tang dynasty. This was a principle that would never change in any era. A tall tree attracts the wind. At this moment, Zhang Feng felt a gust of wind blowing over his head. He didn't know where it came from. At first, he thought that it might be the Guanlong group, but now it seemed that it was impossible. This was not Guanlong's doing. At the very least, they did not have such powerful strength. But you're talking about people from the 5 surnames and 7 clans. This seemed a little impossible. If people from the 5 surnames and 7 clans wanted to cause trouble, he would have broken up long ago. As long as they joined forces, with the current distribution of power among the 5 surnames and 7 clans, they would definitely be able to do this. But who was he? He was just a grasshopper jumping around happily. Moreover, he had his own business. Although he didn't have any intersection with them, he was still inextricably linked. If they attacked him at this time, they would be cutting off their own source of income. Therefore, even if Zhang Feng was from the 5 surnames and 7 clans, he would not do this. After all, if there was an opponent, it would also be a whip that spurred him to constantly improve. At this time, Jing Shu really found the feeling of home. After last night, She suddenly felt that Zhang Feng seemed to care more about her. Before last night, Zhang Feng looked at her with longing and reminiscence in his eyes. Jingshu knew that Zhang Feng thought of another woman when he saw her. Although she wanted to know, she was a smart woman. When the time was right, Zhang Feng would naturally tell her. But so what? After all, at this moment, she belonged to Zhang Feng, and Zhang Feng also belonged to her. She didn't want to compete with others for anything. She just wanted a comfortable home. After all, after so many years of wandering, she was already tired. Jingshu? Let's go to bed? In the next 3 days, Zhang Feng went back and forth between the mansion and Chang and university. Slowly, he found a way to teach this group of people. In these 3 days, Li Chengqian and the others seemed to be attracted by the prosperous scene described by Zhang Feng. Most importantly, the things that Zhang Feng taught them, those mysterious things, and those miraculous experiments, seemed to have opened a new door for them. They couldn't help but be addicted to it. There was almost no need for Zhang Feng to urge them. When they had nothing to do, they would get together to study the wind and aerodynamics. Whether it was going to the toilet or walking home, they would still talk about the 24 elements that Zhang Feng had mentioned. Although they only knew the general function of these elements, they really didn't know what the use of reciting the periodic table was. But what did it matter? This thing, although it was a mouthful, damn, it was still knowledge. At the very least, when they recited it in public, they felt that others were dumbfounded, and they felt that they were unfathomable. This made them feel even more amazing. Chapter 1268. After 3 days of basic training. When the sun rose on the 4th day, Zhang Feng was dragged out of the palanquin in a daze by the servants. They threw him at the gate of Chang and university and left without any sense of loyalty. Zhang Feng squatted at the gate for a long time before he came back to his senses. He rubbed his groggy cheeks and walked into Chang and university. The security at Chang and university was particularly strict today. Other than Jia Daoren, who was pacing back and forth at the entrance with the MO blade, he had also mobilized over 30 burly men from White Deer Academy. In the hands of these men, there was a strange diamond-shaped object that looked like bamboo strips. Those who knew would definitely know its terrifying name. Mitsubishi Army Knife. Those who didn't know would think that it was a game. In the courtyard where Zhang Feng needed to do the experiment today, there was no one else except for Zhang Feng, Li Chengqian, and the others. In the middle of the courtyard, Li Chengqian and the others built an open-air laboratory for Zhang Feng according to the scale of the laboratory in his room. There was a white cloth list on the table, which was filled with the things needed for the experiment. The little remaining alcohol had been divided into countless alcohol lamps, which were burning fiercely. There were even a few that were not enough, so they could only use tung oil lamps to replace them. On the experiment table, there were not only phosphor ores, but also some saltpeter, charcoal, and other things that Zhang Feng had collected himself. There were even some rust that would only appear in water that had not been touched for a long time. The red and green things were placed on the table. When they saw Zhang Feng arrive, they quickly stood up straight. "Hello, Dean." Zhang Feng waved his hand and asked them to sit down. Then he said, "I won't talk about the rules. Today's experiment is very important. It is important enough to change the history of the Tang dynasty and the current farming methods. Are you all ready?" Ready? How could they not be ready? What kind of situation was this? Moreover, ever since Zhang Feng had mentioned the beauty of the world, their Lao Tzu had directly pointed at their noses and said that if they could not learn, they would be expelled from the family. Who the F***ck could stand this? The others were fine, but what about Li Chengqian? He was the crown prince. Although it was impossible to expel him from the family, it would greatly affect his reputation and his father's impression of him. This was something he couldn't bear. This was tantamount to erasing his path to becoming the crown prince. After they left, Zhang Feng picked up the experimental equipment on the test bench and said, "Although the extraction of phosphorus is simple, it is also a bit troublesome. Our main task is to analyze the composition of phosphorus. Have you all understood the composition of phosphorus?" This was something they had been memorizing for the past few days. If they couldn't remember it, Zhang Feng would really go crazy. After they nodded, Zhang Feng pointed to a glass container that was as big as a wash basin and said, "In fact, the experiment of extracting phosphorus fertilizer is very simple. You just have to grind the phosphorus and separate it. Then you distill it into phosphorus vapor through this container. Then, you pass the vapor through this pipe and guide it into this glass container. Let it meet water and naturally dissolve and precipitate." Zhang Feng explained the steps of the phosphorus experiment. Then, he asked Li Chengqian to come up and wear special rubber gloves. Then he ground the phosphorus. This step was very simple. On the other side, Zhang Feng filled the container with water and placed it on the oil lamp. After adjusting the flame of the oil lamp to the highest, he poured the phosphorus powder into the water. At this moment, something unbelievable happened to Li Chengqian and the others. Following the burning of the oil lamp, the glass container began to boil violently. Then, the glass container slowly turned misty. After that, no one could see what was inside. However, they could see that in a curved glass tube at the top of the container, a trace of mist was slowly flowing toward the other end of the tube due to pressure. The other end of the tube was placed at the bottom of another container. Slowly, more and more mist entered the other container, and gradually, the mist became heavier. Zhang Feng also pointed to the container and explained steam dynamics to everyone. However, at this moment, what Zhang Feng didn't notice, what everyone didn't notice, was that the water in the container that was being heated by the oil lamp slowly dried up. However, because of the mist, no one noticed it. Only a loud bang was heard. In an instant, all the glass containers on the test bench exploded. Even the glass fragments were directly blown far away. Zhang Feng's back and the faces of Li Chengqian and the others were instantly sprayed with a large amount of steam atomized powder containing phosphorus elements. This time, everyone was dumbfounded. Although no one was injured due to the cooling of the draft tube and the steam was not hot, Zhang Feng was the first to react. He hurriedly shouted, "Everyone, immediately cover your mouth and nose. Go and drink a jar of vinegar." Everyone was dumbfounded. What kind of operation was this? Wasn't this just setting off a firecracker? Drinking vinegar? However, everyone still followed Zhang Feng's instructions and ran weakly to Chang and University, looking for vinegar to drink. Chapter 1269. Although they did not know why Zhang Feng wanted them to drink vinegar. However, Niu Jinda's previous experience made them choose to believe Zhang Feng. After all, Niu Jinda had been drinking vinegar during this period of time when he was recuperating. Moreover, this guy had developed a strange habit of drinking vinegar instead of alcohol. He would not be satisfied if he did not drink 3 jars of vinegar every day. Although Li Chengqian and the others found it unbelievable after hearing this, after hearing that drinking vinegar could save their lives, they did not care so much at this time. One after another, they scampered outside. Once they left Chang and University, as long as they saw roadside stalls or restaurants, they would directly slap the money on the stalls. "Shopkeeper, give me vinegar." This time, everyone was dumbfounded. Who was this? This was the stubbornness of Chang and City. Moreover, it was the 4 great demon kings. How did they change to drinking vinegar? Most importantly, they were all small businesses. Usually, they would only have a jar of vinegar. That was an existence that could break the sky, not to mention those small taverns. Not to mention those roadside stalls. How much vinegar could they have? But at this time, how could they afford to provoke these devil kings? With trembling hands, they took out the remaining vinegar and handed it to Li Chengqian and the others. "Sir, this is the last bit of vinegar I have. If you think it's not enough, I'll go buy more now." How could Li Chengqian and the others wait? As they walked, they divided the vinegar and drank as they entered the next stall. Most importantly, they did not know how much vinegar they had to drink. Moreover, Zhang Feng did not say. Moreover, Niu Jinda needed to drink 3 jars every day. How could this little bit be enough? In the end, the few of them directly separated and searched for vinegar along the street. In this way, the entire Chang and City was in an uproar. It's over. The 4 great demon kings have gone crazy. They don't drink wine anymore and drink vinegar instead. What the F***? What did you say? Is this true? Go and see. They have drunk all the vinegar in Lao Tzu's stall. Now Lao Tzu can't even sell his chaos. On the other side, Cheng Chumo held the vinegar jar and drank it with tears in his eyes as he ran into a small tavern. As soon as he entered the door, he threw the empty jar on the ground and roared, "Shopkeeper, give me another jar. It's best if you give it all to Lao Tzu." Originally, when the tavern manager saw that the 4 demon kings had arrived, he was ecstatic. After all, the money for today's drinks would not be small. He hurriedly stopped entertaining the guests and even invited Cheng Chumo to a private room on the 2nd floor, personally bringing 2 jars of good wine. "Master Chin, this is the best wine in the shop." Upon hearing that, Cheng Chumo widened his eyes and burped loudly. The smell of vinegar almost made the tavern owner faint. Cheng Chumo waved his fist and pulled out a string of money from his arms, saying, "Lao Tzu wants vinegar. Bring out all the vinegar in your shop for Lao Tzu. If you don't do it, believe it or not, Lao Tzu will set your shabby tavern on fire today." The tavern owner was dumbfounded, but when he saw that Cheng Chumo was not talking nonsense, he hurriedly cried out for vinegar with trembling legs. He was so anxious that he almost cried. Although the reputation of the 4 demon kings was not very good, they were still honest. At least, they were always very generous when it came to drinking. But once you offended them and made them unhappy, you would be in trouble. With this shout, the whole tavern was dumbfounded. What was going on? Were the 4 demon kings really going to drink vinegar? This vinegar, was it so delicious? Slowly, everyone could not help but think of the magical things that Zhang Feng had fiddled with before. For example, barbecue, beer and the like. These things, which one of them was not the most common thing. But after going through Zhang Feng's hands, the sprouted wheat could be fiddled with to make such delicious wine. Could it be that at this time, how could everyone still care about drinking? They all followed Cheng Chumo's example, looking for vinegar everywhere. Although they couldn't stand the smell, this thing would definitely sell like hotcakes after being yelled at by them. Now, they could stock up as much as they could. That was definitely right. They just needed to wait and see if there were good things like vinegar down the mountain in the future. At that time, whether they drank it or sold it, they could make a fortune. At this time, Li Qingqian, Cheng Chumo and the others were miserable. Where could they buy it? In the end, they had no choice but to come to Niu Weili. Niu Weili trembled with fear and gave them some documents. They even snatched a few fast horses and went straight to the vinegar factory outside the city. At this time, everyone knew that something big must have happened. But this vinegar would definitely be a big fire. How could the people in the city sit still? They all followed Cheng Chumo and the others to the vinegar factory. After Niu Weili learned the truth, he was in a bad mood. Looking in the direction that Cheng Chumo and the others had left, he asked with a confused expression, "Go, follow those masters. Find out for this master what the vinegar is for and why they are acting like this today." The yamen runner could not help but be curious. When Niu Weili gave the order, he ran away. Niu Weili stopped him and roared, "Buy dozens of vats of vinegar for me. You must remember." Chapter 1270. In the palace, Li Shimin finished dealing with government affairs. It was rare for him to eat a bowl of sour vinegar noodle soup. But when the noodle soup was served, Li Shimin couldn't help but twitch his nose slightly and ask, "Shao Gizi." "Yes, Your Highness. Isn't this side missing something?" How could Shao Gizi not know what was missing? But it was related to the crown prince's reputation, so he didn't know what to say for a while. But Li Shimin didn't care so much. He slapped the table and said, "Tell me, what's wrong with Imperial Chef Zhou?" "Your Majesty, it's not the fault of the Imperial kitchen. It's because the vinegar is gone." Li Shimin was confused. "Isn't the vinegar delivered to the palace every day? Why is it gone? What do the people in the Imperial Household Department do? Send an edict. The salary of the people in the Imperial Household Department will be deducted for 1 month." Shao Gizi was in charge of the Imperial Household Department. How could he bear such grievances at this time? He hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, it's not the Imperial Household Department's fault. There's no more vinegar in the whole of Chang." Li Shimin was so angry that he laughed. This was the first time he heard that the vinegar could be used. "Tell me, and I'll pardon you." Xiao Gizi heard and told Li Shimin everything that happened in Chang and city today. After that, Li Shimin was completely confused. He couldn't wrap his head around it. "You mean, the crown prince and the others suddenly appeared and then crazily bought vinegar in Chang and city?" Xiao Gizi was already dripping with cold sweat. But at this time, the emperor was asking, so how could he dare not to say it? He hurriedly said, "Yes, it's true." Li Shimin fiddled with the vinegar noodle soup without vinegar and laughed angrily. "This is the funniest joke I've heard this year. How big is Chang and city? Can they buy all the vinegar in Chang and city with just a few people? Are they going to open a vinegar factory?" Li Shimin was so angry that he laughed. But after laughing for a while, he suddenly realized something and hurriedly asked, "Let me ask you, did the crown prince say that he was going to Chang and University to do an experiment this morning?" "Your Majesty, that is indeed the case." This time, Li Shimin finally understood. However, he was also a little worried. He knew better than anyone what Chang and University was doing. That's to do phosphate fertilizer experiments. Furthermore, this phosphate fertilizer was poisonous. Even the strong and healthy Niu Jinda had been poisoned by it. This crown prince, was he poisoned as well? He suddenly remembered that when Zhang Feng treated Niu Jinda and the others, the thing he used the most was this vinegar. Could it be the crown prince and the others were poisoned? This time, Li Shimin could no longer sit still. But when he thought about it, it didn't make sense. This shouldn't be the case if he was the first to discover it, right? And how much vinegar would there be in the whole of Chang? 100 jars? 1,000 jars? What did they want the vinegar for? Li Shimin waved his hand and asked, "Tell me, why do they want so much vinegar?" Little Gizi felt a little wronged. This afternoon, according to the usual practice, people from the Imperial Household Department went to the gate of the Imperial City to deal with those who planned to send ingredients to the Imperial Palace. However, vinegar was the only thing missing. After asking, they found out that when these people saw Li Chengqian and the others snatching the vinegar, they directly snatched all the vinegar in Chang and city. Even the vinegar in their cars was snatched by the crown prince and the others. If it were anyone else, little Gizi could have sent them to prison with an order. However, this was done by the crown prince and the heir of the duke. How could they dare? In the end, they had no choice but to send out people to search Chang and city. However, after searching the entire Chang and city, they couldn't find a single drop of vinegar. However, it was almost time for the emperor to eat. Little Gizi could only order some people to continue searching while some people hurried back to the palace with ingredients. After little Gizi explained the matter to Li Shimin's face stiffened. He couldn't say whether this matter was right or wrong. "You're wrong, right? That's because Li Chengqian and the others were in the wrong first. You're right? Without vinegar, how are they going to do business?" However, what interested Li Shimin the most was Zhang Feng's experiment. He waved his hand and said, "Send a message to the crown prince and ask about his situation." In the end, Li Shimin could only do so. After all, although he was interested in the experiment, the autumn planting worship ceremony was about to be held. How could he have time to watch it? He could only suppress this matter in his heart. After all, the matter of the phosphate fertilizer was very important. Wasn't it just poison? Zhang Feng even knew the blood transfusion technique. How could this small matter be difficult for Zhang Feng? While Li Shimin was eating vinegar-free noodles with a clear conscience, on the other side, Li Chengqian and the others were miserable. They were in a tragic situation. At this time, the few of them directly occupied the vinegar factory in Chang and city. With a huge vinegar jar behind them, each of them drank a mouthful of vinegar weekly. Sometimes, when they burped, the vinegar could even be sprayed far away. "Brother Qian, how much more do we want to drink?" Cheng Chumo asked, breaking down. Li Chengqian burped as he looked down at the vinegar jar beside him with difficulty and said, "We have to drink at least one more jar. Otherwise, we'll lose our lives here." Chapter 1271. Li Chengqian and the others' crazy actions. Even a few big shots on the mountain were alerted. But before the experiment, Zhang Feng had strictly ordered that no one was allowed to enter Chang and university without his permission. The most important thing was, Zhang Feng did not dare to let others see his miserable state at this time. The reason why he drove Li Chengqian and the others out was that he accidentally found a dozen jars of vinegar in the cafeteria of Chang and University. And he also knew about this poison. In fact, it was not bad. It was just nausea and vomiting for a few days, and he felt weak for a few days. But with vinegar, the natural antidote, the symptoms would be much better. At least, it would not let the phosphorus poison spread in the body. However, even with this being the case, Zhang Feng was still greatly tormented in the past 3 days. He had diarrhea. In addition, he had been playing with Jingshu for 3 days at home. His body had been hollowed out. At this time, he had diarrhea. 3 days later, Zhang Feng felt a little better. But Li Chengqian and the others were miserable. They had been drinking vinegar for the past few days. At this time, there were signs of vinegar poisoning. With his weak body lying on the bed, Zhang Feng had no choice but to ask someone to invite Sun Simiao down the mountain that very night. Under Sun Simiao's uncontrollable laughter, Sun Simiao prescribed some Chinese medicine for them and even gave Zhang Feng a good deer antler. After that, Sun Simiao left with a hearty laugh. Looking at the deer antler in Zhang Feng's hand, how could these stubborn people not understand the situation? That was simply a matter of seconds. All right. Zhang Feng was speechless. But he still waved his hand and said, "Last time was a mistake. This time, it will definitely not happen again." But no matter what he said, Li Chengqian and the others did not dare to take a step closer to the experiment table as if they were avoiding the god of plague. "Fengzi, you are a magnanimous person. Spare us. Although sometimes we do like to bully you and even like to tease you, we are brothers. This is not a joke. This is going to kill us. Think about it. It doesn't matter to us, but what about you?" The 3 beauties at home were staring at him. "Are you that assured?" Zhang Feng immediately shut his mouth. Fine. Lao Tzu will give you guys something good. I swear, if you guys get poisoned again, Lao Tzu will find each of you the prettiest girl in the world. How about that? Girl?" After hearing these words, Cheng Chumo was the first to betray Li Chengqian and the others. She ran over to Zhang Feng and put her arms around his shoulders. How could Li Chengqian and the others have any reason to refuse? Although they didn't care about Zhang Feng's so-called beauty, if this Zhang Feng was so confident, then he would definitely come up with something good. Although they didn't know what Zhang Feng was up to, at the very least, it was related to the phosphorus fertilizer. If this thing was tested, then it definitely needed to be mass-produced, right? At this time, if there was this thing to reduce the poisoning rate, then it would increase the production. What was the production? That was a large amount of copper coins. Thinking about this, Li Chengqian sighed and said, Fine. We are all brothers. But what are you trying to do? This is poison, a poison that is spread through the air. Do you have a way to completely isolate it? He believed in Zhang Feng, but no matter how he thought, he couldn't think of a way Zhang Feng was going to solve this problem. Could it be using urine? This thing was the best antidote at the moment. However, when he thought that Zhang Feng would rather die than use this thing, Li Chengqian was the first to rule it out. But when this thing was lined up, Li Chengqian realized that there was really nothing that could replace this thing. You are talking about alcohol, right? This thing was gone now. The alcohol that was being made would take at least half a month to complete. What could it be? At this time, Li Chengqian couldn't figure it out. In waves of nausea, Li Chengqian hurriedly rushed to the outhouse. After weighing the pros and cons, Zhang Feng asked Jia Daoren to send him back home. He only asked Li Chengqian and the others to review the old and learn new things in their free time. After all, he hadn't returned for 3 days. At home, Jingshu, Zhang Yuyao, and the others must have been worried. She was a person with a family. He had to go home to report his safety. Otherwise, he didn't want to see Jingshu crying every time they met. When Zhang Feng returned to the mansion, it was as usual, causing a huge commotion that shook the earth and mountains. In the entire residence of the 16 Wangs, everyone could hear the commotion he caused. After all, those who could live in the Wang's residence were not ordinary people. As for Zhang Feng's special existence, the masters of the Wang's residence paid special attention to him. As soon as Zhang Feng entered the door, he saw the pale-faced Jing Shu standing at the gate of the mansion with Zhang Yuyao's help. Zhang Feng was a little speechless, but he still stepped forward and held the hands of the two women. "I'm fine. It's just that something went wrong these days. I have to keep an eye on those guys." Jing Shu certainly didn't believe him. After all, they hadn't seen each other for 3 days. Zhang Feng's face had become a little thinner, and even his eyes had lost the wisdom they used to have. "Are you sure?" Jing Shu finally said these 3 words after holding it in for a long time. Chapter 1272. She was so anxious that she had the urge to slap her own mouth. Fortunately, there was Zhang Yuyao. She stared at Zhang Feng with some resentment and said, "You still have the nerve to come back? Do you know how Sister Jing Shu has been living these 2 days? She has been crying every day. If we hadn't pulled her away quickly, she would have run to Chang and university. It would be strange if she didn't feel resentful. Obviously, he was the main wife, but in the end, not only Yu, but Jing Shu and Zhang Feng had consummated their marriage. Now she was the only one left. When she learned the news a few days ago, Zhang Yuyao was even more depressed for 3 days. But I'm the main wife, okay? But after all, she was also a well-educated person. She also knew that things at this time were not as she thought. Jing Shu was a geisha, and she didn't have a family. It was understandable that Yu had sex with Zhang Feng out of impulse. But she was different. She was originally from Chang and City. In addition, she still had a family and a marriage contract. She didn't dare to cross the line. However, she couldn't swallow the resentment in her heart. That was why she acted like this when she saw Zhang Feng. How could Zhang Feng not know? But what could he do at this time? He just rolled his eyes and pretended to faint on the 2 women. Sure enough, the 2 women were scared out of their wits. They hurriedly carried Zhang Feng into the bedroom while screaming. As soon as they entered the bedroom, the 2 women began to cry. Zhang Feng was too embarrassed to pretend. He hurriedly hugged the 2 women into his arms. Okay, I was just scaring you. I'm fine." Zhang Yuyao stomped her feet angrily, but Jing Shu burst out laughing. Then she gently tidied up Zhang Feng's messy hair and asked, "Are you okay?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Doctor's son has prescribed some medicine for him. He's fine, just a little weak." Upon hearing this, Jing Shu's face suddenly turned red. How could Zhang Yuyao endure the flirting at such a close distance? She was so angry that she glared fiercely at the 2 of them and then walked away. Zhang Feng felt a little awkward. But there was nothing he could do. Zhang Yuyao was indeed very good. She was like the little sister next door. Moreover, it was said that when it came to business, property, and family matters, even 3 Jing Shus couldn't compare to her. Jing Shu had no choice but to support the family. After all, Zhang Feng and Zhang Yuyao were not married yet, and they were both nameless. This was not good. But this did not matter to Jing Shu. This was all fate. It was also after seeing the scene of Zhang Feng and Yu in the utility room that Jing Shu untied the knot in her heart. Originally, she was just a geisha. Although she belonged to the top ranks, her identity was still somewhat unspeakable. But Zhang Feng did not dislike her. Zhang Yao. He did not dislike her and even took the initiative to call her sister. This was enough. A woman like her could marry a man who loved her and cared about her so much. Most importantly, this man was so outstanding. Even if she did not have a status for the rest of her life, she would be satisfied. Zhang Feng couldn't help but ask what she was thinking at this time. But seeing Jing Shu's appearance at this time, Zhang Feng was a little mischievous again. Jing Shu was a little speechless. She pushed Zhang Feng's hand away and sighed. "You are not in good health. You should rest more. I will go and make a bowl of nourishing soup for you. You can rest well these days. I will stay in my room." After Jing Shu finished speaking, she blushed and ran away. Looking at the empty room, Zhang Feng lay on the bed and let out a long sigh. But this was good. At least no one would disturb him. He could also study how to isolate the poison. Although the first thing he thought of was a gas mask, the manufacturing process of that thing was too complicated. With the current time and technology, it was difficult to make in a short time. The first thing he eliminated was the first thing he thought of. But what was left? Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of a medical mask. But the material of this thing, Zhang Feng's eyes lit up involuntarily. That's right. He did make this thing when he was in college. After all, this thing was not troublesome. The most important thing was that the material was very easy to find. A little gauze, cotton cloth, and some cotton could be made into a simple gas mask. Although it couldn't achieve the effect of a real gas mask, as long as it was soaked in white wine before use, it could be perfectly replaced. He did it as soon as he thought of it. These things were available at home. At least on the bed in his room, there were gauze curtains, cotton in the quilt, and close-fitting cotton clothes. These things were already available. The only thing that was a little troublesome was the rubber part. He designed this mask according to the shape of a pig's mouth. This kind of mask was convenient to use, and it would not let people's mouths directly to the mask. And just as Zhang Feng was working on this thing, Chang and city was in an uproar. First of all, the vinegar. Previously, a jar of vinegar only cost 1 to 3 copper coins. But after Li Chengqian and others made such a big fuss, the price of vinegar skyrocketed. It even reached a horrifying level of 10 copper coins per jar. In 3 days, not only did no one from White Deer College come down to buy vinegar, but there was also no news about this vinegar. And the 4 devils did not appear to buy vinegar anymore. This time, the people who were crazily buying vinegar were in for a tragedy. Looking at the vinegar that they bought at a high price, they could not help but curse. What the F***ck, the price of vinegar is going to rise. What the F***ck, vinegar is very useful. This was simply nonsense. But in the end, everyone pointed the spearhead at Li Chengqian and others again. It was this group of bastards who had gone crazy. If they had not gone crazy, the vinegar would not have become like this. Now, there was so much vinegar that could not be drunk like water. It could only rot in their hands. But the people who were the happiest about this were none other than the vinegar factory outside Chang'an City. At this moment, everyone looked at the empty vinegar factory and sighed. Good people. If not for the 4 devils, how could their vinegar be sold so quickly? Who said that the 4 devils were bad people? Lao Tzu was angry with him. Chapter 1273. In fact, Zhang Feng knew what was needed for the mask. It was polypropylene-based melt-blown cloth. But at this time, how could he have the time to do that? Those things were not something that could be created in this era. At the very least, it wasn't now. After thinking for about 6 hours, Zhang Feng finally made up his mind. What method could he use to solve this problem? It was a good thing that was created in this era. This thing was the cicada muslin. Cicada. As the name implied, it was gauze as thin as a cicada's wing. The textile industry at this time was not to be outdone even in the future. Moreover, this was the Tang dynasty. Everything was done by hand. Although it could not reach the speed of automatic mechanization, in the manufacturing of certain things, machines could not be compared to manual labor. For example, cicada. Zhang Feng had seen this thing a few times from Old Master Li and Miracle Doctor Sun Simiao. Although he was extremely envious, these 2 fellows were unwilling to give him even a little bit of it. But at this time, if he could get his hands on this thing, the material used to suppress the isolation barrier of the mask would be set. Zhang Feng thought of a plan for the entire night. In the end, he decided to let Li Gan do it. After all, his grandson was stealing from the old man. Even if he was caught, the worst that could happen was a beating. For people like them, there was nothing that could not be settled with a drink. This drinking culture had always been prevalent in the future and the Tang dynasty. When Li Chengqian limped over with a bloody nose and a swollen face, carrying a large piece of cicada, Zhang Feng hugged Li Chengqian in surprise. Family! You are really my family! Then, under Li Chengqian's resentful face, Zhang Feng waved his hand and called the housekeeper, Du Ziting, over. He personally brought Li Chengqian to Swallow Descent Restaurant to have fun. Anyway, Zhang Feng had money now. He really did not care about this little bit of money. On the other hand, Li Yuan came over 3 times in a rage. However, Jing Shu thought that Zhang Feng's body was weak and that he was recuperating in bed. Li Yuan could only glare helplessly. After glaring furiously at Zhang Feng's door, he left resentfully. This hiding lasted for 2 days. Li Chengqian and the others were all cured of the poison. Each of them was full of vigor. Zhang Feng even felt that these guys seemed to have gained a lot of weight. However, they looked at Zhang Feng's eyes, somewhat evasive. Zhang Feng was a little confused. At this time, Du Ziding poured out her grievances. Master, this group of prodigals, in these 2 days, they spent 30,000 strings of coins. Zhang Feng's expression suddenly changed. How much did you say they spent? 30,000 strings. 30,000 strings. Zhang Feng almost fainted. 30,000 strings of coins. Son of a bitch, you guys tell Lao Tzu to let Lao Tzu go. He has merit, you guys can go. Why do you still want to spend Lao Tzu's money? Do you guys think that Lao Tzu's money is the wind? Fengzi, don't jump. Look at what this is. Cheng Chumo knew that he was going to suffer. He hurriedly covered Zhang Feng's mouth. He took out a piece of paper from his chest and stuck it on Zhang Feng's face. Then, he crossed his arms and said smugly, "Do you think that we brothers spent your money recklessly? You've been hiding these 2 days, but we brothers haven't been idle at all." On this list is the way to find the cicada, as well as the list of places in Chang and city where the cicada can be found. We almost drank ourselves to death before we found this thing. In the past 2 days, we brothers have risked our lives and used your wine to force a few young dukes to drink. Only then did we get this thing. When Zhang Feng heard this, most of the anger in his heart dissipated. At this time, Li Chengqian hurriedly said, "Fengzi, this cicada is specially provided by the imperial family. Ordinary people can't even see it, let alone use it. Legend has it that the manufacturing process of this thing has been lost. These things are products of the previous dynasty's imperial palace. During the founding ceremony, the retired emperor rewarded some of them to officials who performed meritorious deeds. My grandfather was one of them. Otherwise, do you think my grandfather would have let you go so easily? We've already used our connections to get a few young dukes to steal this thing. The prerequisite is that we'll give them 30% of the profits from the hotel business we started. Feng Zi, this is 30% of the profits. It's permanent. Do you know that it's easy for us brothers? Your 30,000 strings of coins is just the money for the wine. We had no choice. We couldn't get any more money, so we asked the housekeeper for some." Du Ziding curled her lips. These guys never said this at the table, and she didn't see them take out a copper coin. At this time, in front of her master, how did they become meritorious officials? However, when Zhang Feng heard these half-truths, he was really confused by them. Li Gan and the others were right. This thing was indeed very precious, and there weren't many records even in historical materials. It only said that Yang Guang fell, Li Yuan was full, and without the Sui dynasty's treasury, there would be no Tang dynasty's prosperity. Although the statement was half true and half false, the cicada was indeed among them. Zhang Feng didn't want to say anything more. More importantly, he would be able to get more cicada in a few days. This thing was a good treasure. If it was passed down, it would definitely be more valuable than his mother's paintings. This was a real national treasure. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng patted Li Chengqian's shoulder and said with emotion, "Good brothers, I've wronged you. Come, I'll treat you to a big meal today." Chapter 1274. Du Ziding was very angry. He felt that his master was being unfair. However, he really did not know what Xianxia was. Moreover, in the past 2 days at Yanlai restaurant, he had seen the extent to which these masters squandered money like it was dirt. That was simply throwing away the copper coins in his bosom. However, that newly recruited female woke pirate was not bad. This time, Zhang Feng was magnanimous for a while. He set up a copper pot in the yard, and then added some butter and other things into the pot. Zhang Feng even called Jing Shu to sit in front of the copper pot with them. Zhang Feng even asked Jing Shu to come and sit in front of the copper pot with the others. After a while, that spicy but incomparably tempting hot pot aroma slowly filled the entire courtyard as the charcoal under the copper pot roasted. Around the copper pot, there was a table that seemed to have been chiseled through the middle. It was filled with all kinds of seasonal vegetables and fruits. There were even some fish and prawns from the river and eels. There was also no lack of wild game from the mountains. However, the most attractive thing was that in front of everyone, there was a big bowl of fist-sized but very thin slices of meat in front of everyone. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "A few days ago, we got a black bear from the mountains and sent it down. This is a good treasure. I can't bear to eat it, but today, we brothers are in luck. This hot pot-boiled black bear meat, I think it's your first time eating it, right? Come, 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 all of you have a taste." Black bear. As the name implied, it was a black bear. During the Tang dynasty, this thing was still very common. However, because of its ferocity, many people did not dare to hunt it. In addition, this thing had very few natural enemies in the Qinling Mountains, so it was abnormally fat. However, when eating this thing, there was a special way to eat it. These creatures were omnivorous, but when winter was about to arrive, they would store a large amount of precious herbs and other things in their stomachs in advance so that they could sleep soundly through the winter. Although the weather in the Qinling Mountains and the pass was very pleasant at this time, winter still came earlier than in other places. At this time, on the main peak of the Qinling Mountains, one could see white snow when looking up. The most important thing was that He Zi basically lived in those kinds of high places. At this moment, the blood flow was because it was lost. Or perhaps it was because of the sudden appearance of White Deer College that it was extremely curious and wanted to see what was going on, so it was placed on Zhang Feng's dining table. The meat was coarse. However, it didn't affect the taste. Especially after Zhang Feng added a large amount of cumin, sesame oil, the black meat had an even more unique taste. Even Jing Shu had let go of her modesty and ate 2 more pieces at this time. The meal lasted for 4 hours. After that, the few of them wanted to take a look at the fur of this thing that had just entered their stomachs. To put it bluntly, they were just envious. Zhang Feng waved his hand and kept the bear paw and the best tenderloin meat. Along with the bear skin, the bear gallbladder, and the bear stomach, he gave them all away with a wave of his hand. Jing Shu was so angry that she stomped her feet. But what could she do? After Li Chengqian and the others left ecstatically, Zhang Feng put his arm around Jing Shu's waist and said, "Don't worry, I've prepared everything for them. I even sent someone to send some to Jiangnan's Yu." Jing Shu heaved a sigh of relief when she heard that. Zhang Feng couldn't help but sigh. With a big family business, there were naturally more things to consider. He really didn't know about these things, but it was all thanks to this official that Zhang Feng found for him. Otherwise, Zhang Feng wouldn't know how to distribute this time. Most importantly, Old Master Li seemed to be really reluctant to give up the cicada this time. This time, he gave him something to block his mouth and simply gave him the whole black head that was cut off. After everyone left, Zhang Feng returned to the study again. The matter of the mask was solved, but he still had to think about this experiment. After all, if this thing was not done well, it would cause a big problem. If it was not done well, it would cause people to die. This thing was simply a time bomb. Zhang Feng studied the baking time of the container carefully. Otherwise, if it was cooked again, not to mention others, even Zhang Feng would be furious. On the other side, in the palace, Li Shimin and Li Yuan also saw Li Chengqian, who returned in a hurry. As soon as they entered the imperial study, Li Chengqian didn't see the worry on Li Yuan's and Li Shimin's faces. Instead, he said excitedly, "Chengqian greets grandfather, retired emperor and father." Li Shimin and Li Yuan knew what Li Chengqian went to do today, but he came back so early. They were also a little suspicious. Li Yuan couldn't help but ask curiously, "What, you made that thing?" Replying to imperial grandfather, "For the time being, I haven't seen what Feng Zi made. However, today, Feng Zi asked me to send some black meat back for Imperial Grandfather and Imperial Father to try. I didn't dare to delay and hurriedly sent it back." Chapter 1275. Li Shimin and Li Yuan were somewhat stupefied. However, Li Yuan still said somewhat viciously, "You want to exchange for my cicada with a bit of black meat? That cicada! You brat, you didn't learn anything from that brat and just had to learn this kind of filthy thing. When the time comes, see how I punish you." Li Chengqian felt very wronged. But right now, he could not care so much anymore. He hurriedly told the two about the things that Zhang Feng gave the two people. Li Yuan glared at Li Shimin and said, you see, does this brat have any manners? He took all the good things and just sent us some scraps. What is this? Don't stop me anymore. I have to go and teach that brat a lesson. When Li Shimin saw the situation, he hurriedly pressed Li Yuan down on the dragon chair and said, Imperial Father, tomorrow is the autumn planting sacrificial ceremony. How about we talk again after this matter is over? Li Yuan thought about it. In the end, he still gritted his teeth and agreed. Although that cicada was a treasure, it was also merely one of his treasures. If not for the old eunuch discovering that Li Chengqian secretly took it away, he also would not know that his bedroom palace still had this plaything. What's more, there were still many of these things in the palace. At most, he could just get another one. Li Yuan just could not stand Zhang Feng. This brat did not teach anything and actually taught Li Chengqian to steal. If this matter were to spread out, that would simply ruin the imperial family's atmosphere. You brat, as long as you say that you want it, just say it. Whatever you want, I won't give it to you. My private residence was already given to you. What else do you want? At this time, upon thinking about that Zhang Feng's private residence, Li Yuan was angered until his teeth itched. That place. He should not have directly given it to Zhang Feng in a fit of pique. Otherwise, what a nice residence. Thinking up to here, Li Yuan was extremely furious. After greeting Zhang Feng once more, he said, Erlang, after the autumn planting sacrificial ceremony is over, I prepare to move out of the imperial palace. Hearing this, Li Shimin was shocked and hurriedly asked, Father, could it be that it's because that brat taught Chengqian to steal your? Li Yuan smiled and said, it's just a piece of cicada gauze. I even gave him Feng Lang Jusu's commander's seal. Why would I still care about this? Didn't that kid build a villa on the mountain? Chengqian, tell me, did those old fellows move in? When Li Chengqian saw that the topic had come back to him, he hurriedly said, replying to Imperial Grandfather, the villa area on the mountain has been built long ago. As for yours, Imperial Fathers, and the other Duke Uncle's residences, they are all independent. They face the north, and the feng shui and scenery are all in the best locations. The blacksmiths from the western region made a kind of transparent colored glass, saying that it can be used as a window. Transparent glass. Li Shimin and Li Yuan exclaimed at almost the same time. Their gazes couldn't help but instantly look towards the glass smoking stove on the table. They had seen a lot, but where had they ever seen something so transparent? Li Yuan was even more curious. The last time he went to the mountain, during the mountain opening ceremony, he indeed went to see that thing. However, he only went to see it a few times from afar. He really didn't go directly to the villa area. After all, it wasn't the right time at that time. He felt that the window was a bit novel. It was very different from the windows now. Big and wide. Previously, he was still wondering, such a big window, how would this window paper be pasted? How much window paper would be used in a year? But now, Li Yuan asked, have you ever seen that kind of transparent colored glass? How could Li Chengqian not have seen it before? This thing, they had seen it every day these past few days. At this time, when he saw Imperial Grandfather asking, he carefully took out a glass bottle the size of a small fist from his bosom. The glass bottle was naturally used for experiments. Below it was a space the size of an egg, and the bottleneck was only the thickness of a thumb. However, it was extremely narrow and long, no less than the length of a chopstick. After seeing this thing, Li Yuan and Li Shimin's eyes couldn't help but light up. They even personally stood up and walked to Li Chengqian's side, carefully touching this glass bottle. Is this the kind of transparent colored glass you were talking about? Li Yuan was planning to take it and play with it. He was even thinking about when he would let Zhang Feng change all the things he used into this. Seeing this, Li Chengqian hurriedly said, Imperial Grandfather, you have to be careful. This thing is not much thicker than the skin of an egg. Give it to me. Why would Li Yuan care about these things? That brat Zhang Feng could make one, that meant that he had the ability to make it. As long as it could be made, this Tang dynasty's rivers and mountains would belong to his Li family. As long as it was something that Zhang Feng could say, how could he, Li Yuan, not make it for Zhang Feng? As long as Zhang Feng liked to play around, he, Li Yuan, dared to accompany him to the end. Li Shimin originally also wanted to take a look, but now that he saw Li Yuan like this, he could only ask Li Chengqian about the use of this thing from the side, as well as that glass and so on. Looking at the window paper of his imperial study, Li Shimin instantly felt that he was too poor. Seeing that Li Yuan was itching to immediately leave the palace to find Zhang Feng, Li Shimin hurriedly stopped Li Yuan and said, "Imperial Father, tomorrow is the autumn planting worship ceremony. After the worship ceremony is over, how about we go up the mountain together?" Li Yuan looked at the thing in his hand, then looked at Li Shimin. In the end, he could only sigh, pointed at Li Chengqian's nose and said, "Immediately go and guard Feng Zi's side for Zhen. As long as there is a chance, tell that bastard that Zhen said to make me a set of this kind of thing. Forget about the matter of the cicada muslin. Otherwise, old man will make him restless." Chapter 1276. By the time Li Chengqian returned to Zhang Feng's house, it was already empty. After asking around, he found out that Chengchumo and the others were in the same situation as him. When they arrived, they were immediately kicked out of the house by their father. The meaning was clear. These kids must have brought their own personal belongings back home, just like him. When Li Chengqian arrived at Chang and University, Zhang Feng had just reprimanded Chengchumo and the others. Originally, there was a complete set of experiment equipment, big and small. Now, half of it was missing. Fortunately, the experiment was not affected for the time being. Otherwise, they would be doomed. After all, tomorrow was the autumn planting sacrifice. Seeing Li Chengqian's arrival, Zhang Feng pointed at Li Chengqian's nose and asked, "Let me ask you, did you steal my experiment equipment back home like them?" How could Li Chengqian admit to this? He had heard Chengchumo and the others being reprimanded at the door just now, but how could this escape Zhang Feng's eyes? Zhang Feng was so angry that he pointed at them and said, "What is this? This is public property. You know the dangers of experiments. If this thing is contaminated by something and you bring it back, won't you harm your family? If you want something, tell me. Why steal it?" Their eyebrows twitched when they heard this. "Did you forget that you asked us to steal the cicada yarn at home a few days ago? If we didn't bring something back, would we be standing here in one piece?" But they didn't dare to say it. Zhang Feng was now in a fit of anger. If he said this, it would be strange if they didn't die. Moreover, they had an important mission. If they couldn't get this piece of glass back, they would be done for. After venting his dissatisfaction for a while, Zhang Feng also felt bored. There was something wrong with this group of people today. Since when did they not talk back after scolding? But now was not the time to talk about this. After all, Zhang Feng also knew that tomorrow was the ceremony of worship. After the ceremony of worship, it would be the real autumn planting. Most importantly, once this thing was missed, there would be some trouble. Although it could be used for spring planting, Zhang Feng had other plans. That was pesticides. When spring came, they would apply insecticide. If they could directly get rid of the locust eggs in the fields, that would be the best. However, if they missed this opportunity, it would really be game over. And most importantly, at this time, Dr. Sun was already preparing insecticide on the mountain. This thing would not wait for anyone. If this were to drag on for too long, the locust plague of the third year of Zhenguan's reign would erupt. At that time, corpses would float for thousands of miles. At the thought of this, Zhang Feng could not help but feel a faint sense of crisis. This sense of crisis didn't mean that he could survive alone with the insecticide. "Don't just stand there. Hurry up and start the experiment. I won't participate this time. I have prepared an hourglass for you. As long as the sand in the hourglass flows out, immediately turn off the oil lamp below the test tube." As Zhang Feng spoke, he pointed to a thin glass tube on the test bench behind him. It was like a can was suddenly tightened with a rope. In the glass, Zhang Feng had already placed the bottom layer with sand facing up. As the sand moved, under everyone's astonished eyes, the sand was flowing into another container below little by little. When several people saw this, they wanted to go forward, but they were afraid of the previous poisoning. At this time, they looked at each other and couldn't help but push the responsibility to each other. Zhang Feng slapped his forehead and said, "You're all going to faint from anger. Come, put this thing on my mouth." Zhang Feng took out a large bundle of pure cotton cloth with 2 rings attached to it from his chest pocket and handed it over to everyone. The most important thing was that he directly threw these things into a jar of white wine and then handed it to them. They were a little suspicious, but they still followed Zhang Feng's method and put it on their mouths. In an instant, the smell of alcohol made several people couldn't help but sniff. "Fengzi, what is this? Didn't you say that we can't smoke and drink? And if we wear this, we won't be poisoned anymore?" Li Chengqian asked hurriedly. Zhang Feng nodded and said, "This thing is called a mask. Once this thing is stained with alcohol, it will isolate most of the harmful substances in the air. Alcohol, and when I operated on Little Tiger before, do you still remember?" Several people nodded with some doubts. Zhang Feng continued, "Alcohol is an antitoxin, but now that we don't have it, we can only use alcohol to replace it. Once this thing is put on, the phosphorus poison won't be affected. But if you dare to secretly suck the alcohol on the mask, then it's a different story. This thing absorbs all the toxins that are brought in when you breathe. If you dare to drink it without caring about your life, then even the gods can't save you." Zhang Feng threatened them fiercely. The few people who were secretly squeezing the alcohol with their lips couldn't help but be stunned. They didn't dare to secretly drink anymore. When Zhang Feng saw this, he waved his hand and said, "Let's begin. Within today, when I succeed in tinkering, you must give me 5 kilograms of phosphorus powder. Otherwise, it will be regarded as a failure. If you want something that you didn't say, don't say it in the future. Even if you say it, you won't get it." Chapter 1277. Of course, Zhang Feng would not participate in the experiment. After all, while guiding these people in the experiment, he also needed to study what would happen after the extraction. Although the phosphorus element was easy to extract, the phosphorus fertilizer was somewhat difficult. In fact, there were 2 ways to produce phosphorus fertilizer. One was to dissolve it with acid, which was what Zhang Feng was doing now. The other was to dissolve it with heat, which was to use silica, dolomite, and phosphorite to quench it at high temperatures. It was like calcining it in a kiln. Then, the phosphorus powder in the phosphorite would be extracted. After calcining, it would be ground into phosphorus fertilizer. Of course, these were also 2 kinds of fertilizer. At this time, what Zhang Feng needed to calculate was whether the acid dissolution method was faster or the heat melting method. After all, if it was dissolved with heat, the toxins would be too serious. Even if these workers were wearing masks, the probability of getting pneumoconiosis and acute respiratory diseases would be greatly increased. This was something Zhang Feng did not want to get involved in easily. He also did not want to do it. At the very least, before the steam engine replaced manual labor, he did not dare to do it. At this time, under Zhang Feng's guidance, Li Chengqian and the others had a clear division of labor. They could even complete the experiment alone. Coupled with the protection of the masks, at least Li Chengqian and the others would not be poisoned by phosphorus anymore. However, when the bell rang, Zhang Feng had already stopped everyone's experiment. Li Chengqian and the others were also attracted by this magical experiment. Even when Zhang Feng called for them to stop, they still anxiously waited for a while before stopping with waning interest. When everyone waited, good lord, it almost gave Zhang Feng a shock. From the beginning of the experiment until now, it was estimated that only 4 hours had passed. However, in these 4 hours, Li Chengqian and the others had already produced more than 50 caddies of phosphorus fertilizer. This made Zhang Feng feel a little incredulous. TSK, you guys are good. You can produce so much in 4 hours? Hehe, Fengzi, if you hadn't stopped us, we would have probably taken out a few more kilograms. Cheng Chumo said smugly. He was about to take off his mask when Zhang Feng glared at him. It's not bad that you can get 50 caddies today. But tomorrow, I need each of you to get 50 caddies for me. I believe that won't be difficult, right? No problem. How about we continue now? It's still early. Cheng Chumo rubbed his hands in excitement. A stone. Through their hands, with the help of a lamp, in less than the time it took to eat a meal, it could be turned into a pile of something finer and whiter than salt. What was this? This was an achievement. When they thought about how these things would cause the food supply to skyrocket in the future, and how all the people would remember their names, they became even more restless. However, Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped them and said, "Now you know the benefits of this thing? Why didn't you have this kind of passion before? If you had this kind of passion before, you would have done a more advanced experiment than this." When Li Chengqian and the others heard this, they couldn't help but perk up their ears. "What experiment?" Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and said, "Now, let's talk about it after you guys understand all the common sense. For the time being, keep these things a secret." Hearing this, Li Chengqian and the others couldn't sit still anymore. Just as they were about to perform the massage plan, Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped them and said, "Okay, put away your tricks. If you put in some effort, you can do this?" "No, Feng Zi, didn't we just get a feel for it?" "Yeah, isn't this the beauty of the body-hardening taste? Don't you trust us? It's still early now, let's do a little more. I estimate that we can make 25 caddies of phosphorus powder today." Cheng Chumo and the others surrounded Zhang Feng and prepared to continue the experiment. Zhang Feng's head was still shaking like a rattle drum. No matter what you say, it won't work. The danger of this experiment can only allow you to end today's experiment. Every day, you must work for 4 hours and rest for 4 hours. Otherwise, you are people who have been poisoned once. If you are poisoned again, even the gods can't save you. I'm doing this for your own good. This time, Li Chengqian and the others didn't insist. They hadn't lived long enough. Besides, they didn't dare to touch the taste of vinegar for the rest of their lives. It was too damn sour. Li Chengqian and the others walked out of Chang and University resentfully. However, at this moment, when Zhang Feng stepped into the sedan, he said, "Remember, a jar of vinegar every day, no less." They still had to drink it. They couldn't help but break down. But there was nothing they could do. They didn't want to experience that kind of discomfort again. After parting ways, Li Chengqian hugged a jar of vinegar and sat in the sedan, drinking as he walked. He drank so much that he almost vomited his intestines out. But what could he do? He had to take care of his life. By the time Li Chengqian returned to the Palace of Heavenly Purity, Imperial Physician Zhou of the Imperial Physician Court was already waiting for him, happily chatting with Hou Junji. When they saw Li Chengqian walk in with that white thing hanging from his mouth, the two of them couldn't help but be alarmed. "Your Highness Crown Prince, what is that on your mouth?" Chapter 1278. Hou Junji's face turned even darker. Looking at the thing on Li Chengqian's lips, he chided, "Your Highness Crown Prince, you are the heir to the throne. Look at what you're doing. Look at what's on your lips. If the other ministers see this and impeach you in court..." Only now did Li Chengqian realize what he was talking about. Taking off the mask that Zhang Feng had worn on his chin, he asked, "You're talking about this? This isn't anything else. It's something that Feng Zi, President Zhang, made." Li Chengqian's casual tone infuriated Hou Junji. He should have been returning to Luozhou after the Mid-Autumn Festival, but because the Crown Prince had been poisoned, he had found an excuse to stay a few more days. Although the Emperor was displeased, there was nothing he could do. How could he not be angry when he saw the Crown Prince wearing such makeup? Who was the Crown Prince? He was the heir to the Tang dynasty. What did white signify? Wearing such an inauspicious thing on one's lips would smear the reputation of the imperial household. But what would the Crown Prince's supporters think? Although the Crown Prince's poisoning had been kept a secret, many people still knew about it. Although many people did not approve of the Crown Prince's experiments at Chang and University, they tacitly approved of Zhang Feng's miraculous abilities. But now, the Crown Prince's life was in danger. It was inevitable that they would panic. If they knew that the Crown Prince was wearing such a thing on his lips, they would panic even more. Could it be that you didn't think of this? Li Chengqian was a cowardly and timid person, and he was also a little paranoid, to the point that he was somewhat indecisive. This was something that everyone in the court knew. Hou Junji had wanted to use the Mid-Autumn Festival and the opening of the academy to build up a relationship with the Crown Prince, but if those who opposed the Crown Prince and those who didn't think highly of the Crown Prince saw Li Chengqian's current appearance and spoke about it, what would the consequences be? Wouldn't the plan that Hou Junji had been planning for so long be ruined? How could Hou Junji not be furious? Li Chengqian didn't really care, But when he saw Ho Junji's expression, he hurriedly said, "Father-in-law, this old man is not worthy. Your Highness Crown Prince, please call me Duke Chen or Old Man Ho Junji. I ask that Crown Prince always remember the etiquette between sovereign and subject." Li Chengqian was a little speechless, but he still gestured for the two to sit down. Then he said, "I know that Duke Chen is imagining things, but Duke Chen is overthinking things. Duke Chen, do you still remember that I was poisoned? How could Ho Junji not know of this?" The one who felt the most uncomfortable and awkward was Imperial Dr. Zhou. He was well aware of the relationship between Ho Junji and the Crown Prince. Who in the palace didn't know? It was also because of this that the emperor allowed Duke Chen to guard Luozhou. The reason behind this, there was no need to talk about it. Ho Junji was an extremely shrewd person. Anyone could see this. Moreover, as the Crown Prince's father-in-law, he had worried himself to death over the Crown Prince's affairs. This made the emperor very displeased, and the officials of the palace were even more displeased. But alas, Ho Junji was one of the emperor's favored officials, and Ho Junji had performed a great service at Xuanwu Gate, so the emperor found it rather hard to swallow his pride. At this time, he was caught in the middle of this, and he could neither leave nor stay. He had originally come to examine the Crown Prince's injuries, but it was no longer appropriate for him to leave. He could only brace himself and listen to the conversation between the two. But how could he avoid this matter? A few moments later, the matter really did involve him. Li Qingqian looked at Imperial Dr. Zhou and said, "Imperial Dr. Zhou, this emperor asks you, back on the mountain, when Fengzi operated on Niu Jianhu, you were also present. This emperor asks you, do you still remember what Fengzi said?" Imperial Dr. Zhou sighed. Replying to Crown Prince's words, this lowly official still remembers. How could this lowly official not remember something that would be recorded in the annals of history? Very well. This emperor asks you, back then when Fengzi covered Niu Jianhu with that white cloth, as well as used to bandage Niu Jianhu's wounds, do you still remember what Fengzi said? I remember, Li Chengqian nodded and said to Ho Junji, Duke of Chen, you were also present at the scene. You should also remember what Fengzi said. This brother, that bandage, and that white cloth are the same. Moreover, the day after tomorrow, when Zhang Feng opened up Niu Jianhu's wounds and examined them, you were also present. The material of this thing is also the same. It isolates the air from the virus. Just think, if Niu Jianhu's severe wounds could be covered with this, do you think that Fengzi would be able to come up with something that could harm this emperor? Then, this thing, when worn on the mouth, is always indecent. Ho Junji naturally remembered Zhang Feng's words. After all, with Li Qingqian's revered status, this thing could be used by others, but not by him. But at this moment, Li Qingqian asked, do you still remember how this emperor was poisoned? Do you still remember how General Niu was poisoned? It was all because of this thing. But with this thing, he won't be poisoned. Tell me, is this thing useful? When the two heard this, they instantly lost their composure. After exchanging a glance, Ho Junji asked, then dare I ask Crown Prince, what is this thing? The mask. Chapter 1279. At this moment, Li Qingqian suddenly understood Zhang Feng's feelings. He suddenly felt that this imperial physician and Duke Chen's way of thinking were so unconventional. He could also feel how laughable it was when he questioned Zhang Feng. Back then, this prince seemed to be as foolish as them in Feng Zi's eyes. Li Qingqian couldn't help but laugh at himself. But more than that, he felt a sense of glory and excitement. Li Qingqian took off his mask and threw it into Duke Chen's wine bowl. Under the astonished gazes of the two, Li Qingqian put on the mask again and said, take a look. What's wrong with this thing? This prince feels that this thing is very good. At the very least, when this prince wears it, this prince doesn't have to fear things like plagues. This prince feels that this thing can be used anywhere in the Tang dynasty. Think about it. Why was this prince poisoned by phosphorus? That's because this prince doesn't understand medicine. If this prince had come into contact with White Deer College's medical courses earlier, this poisoning incident wouldn't have happened. Ho Junji and Imperial Physician Zhou were somewhat dumbfounded. But Ho Junji was rather happy at this moment. Because at this moment he suddenly felt that Li Chengqian had a hint of the aura of an emperor. Although this shadow was still rather vague, at the very least, Li Qingqian knew now. More importantly, Li Qingqian's words and his tone now carried a hint of majesty. He couldn't help but be shocked. Just how much magic did this Zhang Feng have to be able to change the timid and suspicious crown prince into this in just a few months? More importantly, the crown prince's words, although he didn't seem to understand some of it. He didn't understand aerodynamics, infectious diseases, or medical infections. But at this moment, Li Qingqian was already moving in the direction he wanted to go. This was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise for Hou Junji. But the one who was even more shocked was Imperial Physician Zhou. As the chief imperial physician of the Imperial Physician Court, he had always studied medical knowledge and regarded it as a supreme treasure. But what did he just hear? Previously, when Zhang Feng said this, he only felt that this kid was trying to find a different path. As for the blood exchange and the surgery, that kid was just lucky. But how could he have known that this kind of poisoning that made him helpless was solved by Zhang Feng with just a few jars of vinegar? When Niu Jinda was poisoned, even the godly doctor Sun Simiao couldn't do anything about it. Now that he thought about it, why did Sun Simiao stay on the mountain? Could it be that according to the rumors, the crown prince had ordered him to stay? Was it because of Zhang Feng's miraculous medical skills? Imperial Dr. Zhou's eyes couldn't help but slowly show a bit of respect, a bit of passion, and even more loneliness. He didn't expect that all the knowledge he had learned from medical books in his lifetime. In the end, he suddenly felt that Zhang Feng's knowledge was nothing at all. This was simply too much of a blow. Li Qingqian was also in high spirits. Not only did he explain to Imperial Dr. Zhou and Hou Junji what Zhang Feng had taught them, he also criticized those rotten quacks in the world. If not for them, how many people wouldn't have died in the war back then? Back then, when they suffered a little bit of disaster, how many people could survive? If Zhang Feng was here, he would definitely give Li Qingqian a thumbs up. What was a public speaker? God damn it. This was what it was. He was a genius born for the sake of public speaking. In the end, Li Qingqian sighed and slammed the table. Duke Chen, Imperial Dr. Zhou, I didn't want to say so much today. You've seen it for yourselves. How many lives are in the hands of a single physician? Look at how old that godly Dr. Sun Simiao is. But he's still studying Zhang Feng's medical book on the mountain. He's even able to operate on Brother Jianhu together with Zhang Feng. Now, he's even the chief medical teacher of White Deer College. What is this for? This is because godly Dr. Sun doesn't want any quacks in the Tang dynasty. And look at this mask. That damn lunatic. Why didn't he get it done earlier? If only he had it done earlier, it would have been so much better. This time, Li Qingqian sighed once more and ended the discussion on medical hygiene and how the virus was spread. Imperial Dr. Zhou lowered his head in shame and stared at the mask in Li Qingqian's hand. After Li Qingqian was done showing off, he couldn't help but wave his hand and say, "This king is tired today. You can leave." This king still has to study medical textbooks and do his homework. Until now, Hou Junji and Imperial Dr. Zhou stood up hesitantly and prepared to leave. But Imperial Dr. Zhou was unwilling to leave. He hurriedly knelt down and said, "Your Highness Crown Prince, this official has a presumptuous request. I hope that Your Highness Crown Prince can be merciful and reward this official with some masks. It can also be considered as opening a path for all the doctors in the world." Li Qingqian waved his hand and said, "Say it. As long as this king knows, this king will definitely reward you for your years of conscientiousness. I only hope that you can correct your path of medicine and not stick to the rules. Your Highness Crown Prince, this official wants to ask, do you still have this mask?" Li Qingqian didn't expect him to ask this. Originally, he secretly asked Zhang Feng for a few extra masks. He originally wanted to give them to the Emperor, Imperial Mother, and Imperial Grandfather. But now that Imperial Dr. Zhou had said this, he could only reluctantly take out a few masks from his bosom. Take it. Study medicine well and don't let down this king's good intentions. Chapter 1280. In ancient times, the autumn planting was a grand event. Not only did all the people have to participate, but the emperor also had to open an altar to offer sacrifices to heaven and earth. He also had to go to the fields and work with the people. The officials also had to stop eating meat for half a month after the sacrifice. They had to work in the fields for 2 hours every day. This was a rule that had been in place since ancient times. In these days, the imperial palace would also test the officials. If they followed the rules, it would be fine. But if anyone dared to slack off, they would be fired. They would have to be farmers for 3 generations. This was an extremely severe punishment, so no official dared to overstep or slack off. Dong dong dong. After the bell rang 3 times, the people in Chang and city got up and put the things they had prepared for the sacrifice neatly in front of their houses. At the entrance of the Huasheng temple, a group of monks, as well as the emperor, the empress, the retired emperor, and the others, would all pray to the heavens together with a group of senior monks. They would recite the 3 scriptures together before they could go to the altar. It was set up in the backyard of the Huasheng temple, which later became the Big Wild Goose Pagoda. 3 days before the sacrifice, the senior officials of the Big Wild Goose Pagoda had gathered around the pagoda to recite the sacrificial inscriptions for 3 days and 3 nights. When Li Shimin and the others arrived, the sacrificial ceremony officially began. Today, I am ordered by heaven to pardon the people and present to Shinnong, in Chang and University. Zhang Feng heard the bell ringing early. When the bell rang, no matter what Chengchumo and the others were doing, they would instantly stop their work and bow to heaven. At the entrance of Chang and University, Jia Daoren and the others had already placed the 3 sacrificial animals. When the horn of the Huasheng temple sounded, all the merchants in Chang and city set off firecrackers. Zhang Feng was a little surprised. Looking at the actions of the crowd, he asked hesitantly, "Where is Li gone? Why didn't he come?" "Oh, he went to offer sacrifices to heaven," Du Go casually said. However, he suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, "He is the son of a merchant. Naturally, he will be invited to worship heaven with the emperor." Zhang Feng's eyes lit up when he heard this. Only now did he remember that in ancient times, during the autumn planting and spring planting, there would be a ceremony to worship the heavens, and it seemed that all the people had to participate in these activities. However, he was somewhat puzzled as he looked at the few people with dignified expressions. Then, he listened to the hustle and bustle outside the door, as well as the noisy sound of firecrackers. Logically speaking, his academy should have received an invitation or received a decree. After all, it was an academy. However, he had not received any news. What was going on? If even Li Gan and the others were invited, why wasn't he invited? Could it be that there was something wrong with this? While Zhang Feng was puzzled, the few people also hurriedly completed the ceremony. Zhang Feng did not trust Du Go and the others. He hurriedly called Feng Yai over and asked, "Yishuang, you are the most honest one here. Tell me honestly, according to the rules, it seems that all the people have to participate in this ceremony. However, why didn't I receive an invitation, or did no one inform me? Is it okay if we don't go?" "It's okay." Feng Yai went against his conscience and said, "We are an academy, and you are a great scholar. Naturally, no one dares to ask you to participate in the ceremony. Moreover, think about it, during the ceremony, all the people have to kneel. Think about your rules. If they ask you to go and you say something wrong, you will lose your head." Zhang Feng was confused. "Don't we want to go and see it? Moreover, during the ceremony, even the emperor has to kneel. Don't the rules of our academy say that we can kneel to heaven and earth and kneel to our parents? Why can't we do that?" While talking, Zhang Feng felt more and more strange. He was ready to go and see what was going on. After all, Zhang Feng loved to join in the fun. Moreover, it was the most mysterious and grand ancient ceremony. However, at this time, Chengchumo and the others were anxious. They just did not want Zhang Feng to go out. Last night, the emperor personally gave them a decree that Zhang Feng was not allowed to go out. If Zhang Feng went to the altar, wouldn't everything be clear? How could this work? Although they did not know why the emperor was so secretive, this was the emperor's order, and they had to obey it. They directly played their specialty of stubbornness. They said one after another, "Fengzi, don't make trouble. This is a grand ceremony for the emperor and all the farmers in the world to worship Shinnong. Although it is said that everyone will participate, It does not include everyone. Think about it, what are we doing now? What we're doing is also something that benefits the people. We've participated in the sacrificial ceremony since a long time ago. It's just a blessing for the emperor, the officials, and the people. What about you? They're clearly trying to stir up trouble. This is the greatest contribution to the heavens. Moreover, Li Gan has already represented Chang and university in you. If you go now, you will only anger the emperor. Think about it. The officials are watching you now. And the people of the 5 families and 7 clans and the people of Guanlong. According to the rules, they should have participated when the bell rang. But now you have missed the time. If you go now, you are not going to worship. You are going to be a sacrifice to the heavens. Chapter 1281. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. What did this mean? Could it be that human sacrifice was needed for the sacrifice? This was not recorded in the history of the Tang dynasty. He hurriedly asked, "What does this mean?" It means that if you go now, you will be regarded as ignoring God and despising the sacrifice. You will be beaten to death. Wei Shuyu braced himself and said, "This was not wrong." At this time, when the sacrificial ceremony began, if someone dared to appear, it would ruin the entire sacrificial ceremony. Not to mention the emperor, even the common people would bite that person to death, no matter who that person was or what position that person held. The people didn't care who the emperor was, and they didn't care what position you held. If you dared to destroy their rice bowls, make them starve, and tarnish the God in their hearts, then no matter who you were, they would gather around you at the first opportunity. This was something that had happened before in history. Zhang Feng could not help but feel a little scared. Previously, they had thought that no one would inform them if they were going to make a sacrifice to the heavens. Who would have known that the people of this era would be like this? But this was understandable. After all, he was a time traveler and knew nothing about these things. After knowing this, Zhang Feng could not sit still and asked, "Don't you know to remind me?" Cheng Chumo was dumbfounded, but he was secretly delighted. This guy did not know about this. But he still pretended to ask helplessly, "You didn't ask. Who in the Tang dynasty doesn't know about this? We thought you knew." Zhang Feng was speechless. What the hell? If he did not go, what if the mastermind behind this or those who had been unhappy with him for a long time used this against him? Wouldn't he suffer a great loss? Otherwise, wouldn't he suffer a great loss? Ancient times and even the early 1980s were all agricultural times. In this era, food was the most basic skyrocketing. Food was the most important thing for people. Most importantly, food was the most important thing in everyone's heart. If someone really wanted to mess with him, Zhang Feng's face changed slightly. This time, he was really careless. Zhang Feng sighed in his heart. He asked, "Why didn't you call me? Don't you know that someone is messing with us? If someone were to report this to the emperor or use this as an excuse to impeach me, then wouldn't Lao Tzu be doomed?" Cheng Chumo and the others were also dumbfounded. They looked at each other and said, "I don't think so. I heard Li Gan mention this before. He said that it's fine as long as someone represents the academy." The more Cheng Chumo spoke, the more guilty he felt. In the end, his voice became softer and softer. He couldn't help it. Zhang Feng also started to panic. F***ck, looks like I was really careless this time. If he were an ordinary citizen, it would be fine. At most, he would be reprimanded. However, he was a viscount and the chancellor of Chang and University and White Deer College. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng suddenly thought of something and asked, "Did Mr. Bo Shi and the others come down from the mountain?" When he asked this question, Cheng Chumo and the others suddenly remembered that they didn't seem to have heard of anyone coming down from the mountain. Could it be that there was a twist in this? They didn't know about this, so they simply pushed Du Go and Fang Yai out. Du Go and Fang Yai had no choice but to look at each other and said, "You are now a great Confucian scholar." According to the rules, great Confucian scholars don't have to personally attend the ceremony, but they need to work in the fields. Most importantly, as long as the chancellor or the dean of the academy is there, all the students don't have to participate. Hearing this, Zhang Feng's eyes lit up. In ancient times, although it was an era of farming, the scholars were ranked at the top among the farmers. This showed the status of the gentry in a dynasty. When he thought of this, Zhang Feng's mind became active again. Since Li Gan represented the academy and the great Confucian scholar didn't have to personally attend the ceremony, that meant Lao Tzu was fine now. I am also a great Confucian scholar now. But going to the fields, when he thought of this, Zhang Feng slapped his thigh and said, "Go, go, go, I want to go to the fields." They were all dumbfounded. But this was the best way now. They didn't know about this. And Du Go and Fang Yai, who knew this best, didn't mention it when they saw that no one said anything, and because of the relationship between the emperor and Zhang Feng, they thought that they didn't have to participate. Now that they saw that the matter wasn't serious, the two of them heaved a sigh of relief. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to speak, they hurriedly shouted for the guards and servants of the university to look for the guy and ran all the way to the farmland outside the city. The ceremony was still going on. When the Buddha's name was heard in the ceremony, all the horns and drums on the towers of Chang and city sounded at this time. Dong, dong, dong. Oh! As the sound was heard, all the gates of Chang and city were opened, and the people inside and outside the city, whether they were in the fields or on the streets, all knelt down at this time. The ceremony begins. All living beings welcome the auspicious. Chapter 1282. Zhang Feng didn't go directly to the farmland outside Chang and city. He wasn't that kind-hearted. Now that he had a few dozen kilograms of phosphate fertilizer, Zhang Feng naturally prepared to go to White Deer College's farm hatchery. When Zhang Feng arrived at the college, there was a deafening recital of poetry everywhere. Zhang Feng secretly rejoiced. He hurriedly went around the crowd and hurried to the former pig farm. At this time, there were not many pigs left in the pig farm. Zheng Tufu hadn't been there much either. After all, he had a lot of things to do at the foot of the mountain. Basically, Old Gao was the only one left in this place, which used to be coveted by everyone on the mountain. Most of the grass in the farm had been plowed and plowed. Occasionally, a group of chickens and a few pigs could be seen frolicking on it. In the creek below the waterfall in the distance, it was all white and misty. At first glance, one would think that it was snowing. Old Gao was by the stream. He tied his horsetail whisk, which would fight anyone who touched it, to a thin bamboo pole and commanded a large army of ducks and geese. They were foraging for food in the stream. Sometimes, Elder Gao would scold the fat white geese as if he was scolding the young eunuchs. However, the geese would magically stand in front of him and lower their noble heads, allowing Elder Gao to scold them. Li Qingqian and the others couldn't help but be stunned by this scene. F***ck, this works too? Although their voices were very soft, they alarmed Old Gao. Old Gao didn't even raise his head as he scolded, "No more! Old man, there are no more eggs here. If you bastards steal any more eggs, I'll cut them off." In an instant, this cold voice caused Zhang Feng and the others to shudder. Old Gao also turned his head. When he saw Zhang Feng and the others, he didn't even ask for his horsetail whisk. He hurriedly came forward and asked, "Dean, I didn't go to the ceremony?" When he saw the strange expressions on Zhang Feng and the others' faces, he chuckled and said, "Well, those naughty eggs from before were your dog brother. He often brought his friends here to steal eggs, saying that they were for you. That's why Old Man scared them. Old Man didn't mean anything else. If it were any other day, he would have given them the eggs. However, this is the Academy's rule. Moreover, this is the time when chickens and ducks are hatching. These eggs are precious. Alright, Old Gao, I know. Why would I worry about you?" Zhang Feng secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at the smile on Old Gao's face, he finally relaxed. It seemed that it was time to find something for those bastards to do. It wasn't good for them to be fooling around on the mountain all day. Zhang Feng looked at Cheng Chumo and the others and asked curiously, "Dog and Zhu Zi, weren't they your little errand boys before? What do you mean by that?" Cheng Chumo smiled embarrassedly and said, "Well, isn't it because we were busy? So I forgot about it. I'll go tell Mr. Bo Shi and the others some other day and ask how Chu Jun and the other boys to teach them." Zhang Feng gave Cheng Chumo a look that said, "At least you know what's good for you." Dog and Zhu Zi were Zhang Feng's lackeys even before Cheng Chumo and the others. Zhang Feng had always been worried about these guys. Firstly, they had been together for a long time and had feelings for each other. Moreover, these kids weren't bad in nature. If he didn't help them, he really wouldn't have the face to face the neighbors in Tonghuifang. If word of this got out, Zhang Feng would also lose face. At this time, Old Gao asked again, "Is the ceremony over?" According to his understanding, this ceremony would go on for a whole day. As the biggest hero of the Tang dynasty, Zhang Feng had to participate in such a ceremony. However, Old Gao was also an extremely smart person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to stay in the imperial servants department until his hair turned white. It should be that the emperor hadn't revealed his cards to him, so he definitely didn't let this kid go to this ceremony. Old Gao really thought of something when he came here at this time. Sure enough, Zhang Feng sighed and stared at Cheng Chumo. "Isn't it because these bastards forgot such an important thing? That's why I hurriedly went down. Otherwise, if someone found out, I wouldn't even know how I died." Well, it's not their fault. If you want to blame someone, blame that idiot Nyo Weili. He didn't tell me in advance about such a big thing. Damn, we're all brothers on the surface. You're trying to frame me, aren't you? Old Gao and the others could only smile apologetically. "Dean, you've wronged them. You're the dean and a great Confucian scholar. In principle, you must participate in this ceremony. However, you're a great Confucian scholar. According to the laws of the Tang dynasty, great Confucian scholars don't need to participate in these complicated formalities. However, if someone wants to hold them accountable, it's indeed a bit difficult." Old Gao was also a little hesitant. After all, he also knew about what happened on the mountain and that someone wanted to target Zhang Feng. At this time, such a big accident happened. It was really troublesome. However, he was an experienced person after all, and he was also a sensible person. When he saw Zhang Feng come here at this critical time, he couldn't help but ask curiously, "Dean, you should have something important to tell old man at this time, right?" Chapter 1283. Zhang Feng nodded. "That's right. I came here this time mainly because I want to work in the field personally." Sure enough. Old Gao sighed. Originally, this field had been prepared early. After class, Mr. Bosher and the other students of the academy would come to cultivate it personally. The field was the land enclosed by the farm before. Needless to say, the degree of fertility was high. Zhang Feng pointed to the two-story building near where Old Gao lived and said, "Old Gao, I don't need much. We only need the area in front of your door. This is an experiment, and it's a very important experimental site. Do you still remember what I told Ma Zhou?" Old Gao's eyes couldn't help but light up. Of course, he knew what Zhang Feng had told Ma Zhou. Ma Zhou would come back every few days to check on the progress of Zhang Feng's so-called farm hatchery. Old Gao was also looking forward to it. But he didn't know how long he would have to wait. After all, Zhang Feng was too busy. At this time, seeing Zhang Feng coming and hearing what Zhang Feng said, Old Gao's face couldn't help but tremble. He said, "Do you want to do it here?" Zhang Feng didn't know what Old Gao wanted to say, but he still nodded and said, "You should have heard about old Nyo being poisoned, right?" How could Old Gao not know? It was difficult for him not to know such a big thing on the mountain. And that old bastard was the guy who liked to steal eggs and chickens the most. Old Gao couldn't help but ask, "Is it the phosphate fertilizer?" "The phosphate fertilizer has been produced?" Zhang Feng nodded and pointed to an oiled paper bag in Wei Shuyu's arms. He said, "Yes, it has been produced." Old Gao wanted to take a look, but when he looked up and saw the white thing on Wei Shuyu's mouth, he couldn't help but be shocked. He thought it was poisonous, but Zhang Feng didn't wear this thing. He couldn't help but say with an ugly face, "Director, this is poisonous." "How can you?" Zhang Feng was also very helpless. He had already told these guys that this thing was no longer poisonous, but these guys just wouldn't listen. What could he do? He simply explained the mask and the fact that this thing was not poisonous. Then he said, "Old Gao, this thing is very important. I hope that other than the few of us, no one else needs to know about it. Of course, you can tell Ma Zhou." Old Gao naturally understood the importance of this. Once this thing was really developed, the people of the Tang dynasty would no longer have to starve. What kind of concept was that? This was something he didn't even dare to think about. Once news of this spread, the consequences would be fatal. That was why Zhang Feng didn't want others to know about this. After the exchange, Zhang Feng also took off his boots. Stepping on the cold soil with the smell of feces, Zhang Feng suddenly had the illusion that he was back in the village when he was young. It was just that Zhang Feng's action gave everyone a big fright. But since Zhang Feng insisted, the others couldn't say anything. They also took off their boots with Zhang Feng. However, only Cheng Chumo was an exception. He originally wanted to take off his boots, but the stench completely blocked the smell of feces. Under the stern scolding of Zhang Feng and the others, Cheng Chumo had to put on his boots. Farming was actually not difficult. Especially wheat, it only needed to be fertilized and the soil flattened. Then, it only needed to be sprinkled with seeds. However, Zhang Feng was different. After all, whether the seeds were good or not, they could completely replace the seeds' growth in the future. Therefore, after the few of them flattened the soil, Zhang Feng called Wei Shuyu and Zhang Sun to bring a large wooden bucket. Then, they poured plant ash into the wooden bucket, making the water in the entire wooden bucket sticky. Only then did Zhang Feng pour the wheat seeds into the wooden bucket. While everyone was doing this, Yu Shinan and the others also brought a large number of students to the incubation garden. When they saw Zhang Feng doing something inside barefoot, their expressions changed. They waved their hands and asked the students to wait outside. They entered the incubation garden with cold faces with their hands behind their backs. When they saw Zhang Feng's actions, they were also stunned. However, they couldn't say anything. They could only wait for Zhang Feng to finish and settle the score with him later. Zhang Feng didn't notice what was happening behind him at all. After he threw the wheat into the mud for a while, he pointed at the mud and said to Old Gao, "Old Gao, do you want to ask why I threw this thing into this thing?" Not only him, we also want to know why. But before that, don't you want to tell us why you're barefoot? Is this what a great scholar should do? Is this what a dean should do? As soon as Zhang Feng heard this voice, he knew that it was Ouyang Sun's voice. He hurriedly turned around and said, "This student didn't know that all of you esteemed teachers had come and didn't welcome you. Please forgive me." When Zhang Feng came back to his senses, he looked into the distance. "Oh my God, everyone from the academy is here." At this moment, Ouyang Sun, Yu Shinan, and the others' faces were gloomy. It was as if they were ready to fight if he didn't say something. This time, damn it, it's over. Chapter 1284. The commoners were barefoot when they went to the fields, mainly because they had no shoes to wear. Even the straw sandals they wore were bought with money. When they went to the fields, their shoes were the most worn out. At this time, the commoners were basically barefoot when they went out. That was why there was a saying, barefoot man and commoner. In ancient times, the most important thing was one's identity. In this era, people's social class was very obvious. Based on one's identity, one had to wear clothes that suited one's social class. Even if one was in decline, one had to maintain a sense of ceremony. Otherwise, one would be attacked by the masses. This was the sorrow of an era. When one was in trouble, no one would know and no one would care. Even if you starved to death, you would still have that identity. For example, if you were a Confucian scholar or scholar, then if you starved to death, people would only praise you and say that you were honest and poor. No one would look at you and no one would care about you. However, if one dared to beg or disregard one's status to do something that did not match one's identity, one would be disgracing the people in this circle. At this time, it was no longer one's own matter. What was this? This was sorrow. Even if the royal family was in decline, they had to maintain a proper attitude. This was sad, but it was also a custom. At this time, what about Zhang Feng? Not only was he a viscount bestowed by the emperor, but he was also the dean of Chang and University and White Deer College. He was also the chancellor of these two colleges and was the youngest Confucian scholar. At this time, he was going to go to the fields barefoot in front of all the teachers and students of the college? What kind of scandal was this? This was what angered Yu Shinan and the others the most. Even Sun Simiao, who had always thought highly of Zhang Feng, did not say anything at this time. He frowned slightly. Zhang Feng looked around. Everyone around him seemed to be discussing something indistinctly. However, regarding this, Zhang Feng did not comment. What was Lao Tzu's status? That was his business. The emperor had set a rule. Could he not go to the fields? Even the emperor would go to the fields to work today. Why couldn't he go to the fields to work? Was this a joke? Esteemed teachers, can you wait for me to settle the matter of this seed before you teach me about this matter? Zhang Feng had made up his mind. If he didn't straighten out his thoughts today, then he, Zhang Feng, would really have to change his surname. However, in principle, Yu Shinan would not budge an inch. Waving his hand, he pointed at Zhang Feng's boots and said, I don't care what your purpose is. Put the boots on old man first. You don't care about your own face, but you have to leave some face for White Deer College, okay? Fine. It was just a matter of face. Zhang Feng did not move. Instead, he cupped his fists towards everyone and said, May I ask all of you esteemed teachers and everyone present, what does wearing boots have to do with what I'm doing right now? Let me ask you one more thing. During today's autumn planting sacrificial ceremony, did His Majesty stipulate that we must wear boots? Then let me ask you one more thing. If that's the case, can't we sleep, bathe and change our clothes naked? But from what I know, when we land on the ground, are we completely naked? Zhang Feng's 3 consecutive questions left everyone dumbfounded. Zhang Feng was not wrong at all. After all, no one stipulated that a person had to wear boots. Ouyang Sun pointed at Zhang Feng's boots with a gloomy expression and said, You are now a great Confucian scholar and the dean of White Deer College. You must set an example. If you land on the ground with your feet bare, that is understandable. But have you ever thought about whether this is a matter of your identity? Zhang Feng smiled. May I ask Mr. Xinbin, everyone present can be called Confucian scholars and scholars. In the future, in 5, 10, or even 20 years, there may be countless great Confucians here. Then let me ask you, Old Man Kong or Old Man Meng, before they became great Confucians, did they mention the relationship between one's identity and one's shoes? In this student's memory, Old Man Kong once said in a lecture that we should treat each other with sincerity. The reason why this student wants to take off his boots is because this student is praying to the ancestors and the heavens. This is a student's belief. When we step on the ground, we will know the suffering of the common people. Only when we personally experience the suffering of the people can we better remember the life of the people. May I ask what is wrong with this? Moreover, today the emperor and empress, the retired emperor, will personally go to the fields to plant. How can we not follow? This, Ouyang Sun knew that Zhang Feng had a sharp tongue, but he did not expect this kid to have such a sharp tongue. Just as he was about to say something, Chu Suiliang hurriedly stopped Ouyang Sun and said, Let this kid speak. What he said is not without reason. Ouyang Sun sighed and said, We won't say anything. Forget it, forget it. But you, how are you going to explain today's matter to these students? Zhang Feng had been waiting for a long time. Chapter 1285. Seeing that Chu Suiliang gave him a way out, he bowed and pointed at his feet. Then he looked at all the students who were staring at him and said, I know you may still be thinking that as the dean and a great Confucian scholar, what I'm doing is beneath my dignity. Before the students could say anything, Zhang Feng pointed at Hao Chujun and the others and motioned them to come forward. Then he said, I know what you're thinking, but do you know why I'm doing this? Before answering this question, let me ask you first. Do you think all of you can become great Confucian scholars? I know that the main purpose of your coming to the academy is to pass the Jinshi exam and then become an official in the imperial court. Then you can do good for the people of the Tang dynasty. But do you know that there is a saying that goes, what you think of when you think of your emperor, you can't be loyal to your emperor? At this time, all the students, including Yu Shinan and the others, were a little stunned. There was a second part of the saying, and the students were boiling at this time. They bowed together and then said in unison, Please enlighten us, Mr. Dean. Zhang Feng waved his hand and motioned for them to sit cross-legged. After hesitating for a while, they still sat down as Zhang Feng said. Even the dean took off his shoes to work. What right did they have to stand? After everyone sat down, Zhang Feng said, You've read the sage's books. You should remember that Kong Rong let the pear fall. You should know about this kind of story, right? Zhang Feng really didn't remember these stories. There were a lot, but he didn't know how to describe them. He had forgotten most of them. By the way, in the spring and autumn annals of Lu, When Confucius traveled around the countries, he saw a pair of farmers who didn't have an ox to farm. They could only use a man to carry a plow. Confucius went to the field himself and worked as an ox. I think you all should know about these stories. There was such a saying? There was such a saying in the spring and autumn annals of Lu? Yu Shernan and the others were stunned. He thought hard about the records of the Lu family's spring and autumn annals that he had studied before. He really thought of it and could not help but feel a little ashamed. Zhang Feng continued, "We uphold the way of the saints. We should take from the people and use it for the people. Whether we become officials in the future or something else, we should all know one thing, and that is to put the people first. You don't need me to say anything about this, do you? Then all of you, think about what I'm doing now. Is it shameful? Or what was it? I won't force you to be like me, but I just need you to remember that no matter what you do in the future, everything you do must be based on the common people. This is your Tao." This time, all the students were in an uproar. Put the people first. This was something that all of them had learned when they first started learning. As for the officials, if they did not seek the welfare of the people, then what kind of officials were they? This time, everyone was deeply shocked. This student will remember principal's teachings. When Zhang Feng heard that, he heaved a deep sigh of relief. Originally, he just wanted to reminisce and experience the feeling of not going to the ground for a long time. He also wanted to reminisce about the past. However, he did not expect that the customs of this era would make him a joke in front of the students. However, at this time, he did not know how many of these people agreed with his way of thinking. He did not want everyone to agree with him. However, he only needed some of them to remember their path. That would be enough. He did not want to teach 1 or 2 black sheep. At this time, seeing that the matter was resolved, Yu Shernan and the others did not care about Zhang Feng's indecent barefoot. This was because at this time, there were already more students who had imitated Zhang Feng's appearance. They took off their boots and stood on the spot with excited faces. At this time, Ouyangsun smacked his lips. However, in the end, he only sighed. He pretended not to see anything. At this time, seeing this, Old Gao's eyes turned and asked, "What are the benefits of soaking the wheat seeds in this ash?" Seeing that the topic had returned to the main topic, Zhang Feng did not answer first. Instead, he waved his hand and said, "It's getting late for autumn planting. You guys should start too." Following Zhang Feng's lead, over 3,000 students surged into the freshly plowed land, scaring the chickens and pigs, causing them to cry out in fear. They brought their children and fled from this troublesome place. At this time, Zhang Feng mysteriously waved his hand and asked Yu Shernan and the others to come closer. After that, he said, "This thing is actually a preliminary method of selecting seeds." The few of them could not help but be stunned. What kind of method was this? A look of understanding appeared on Old Gao's face. He said, "Please elaborate." Seeds. As I said just now, these are the first factors that can affect the next year's harvest. Only the strong seeds will produce healthy sprouts. Look at the other coarse seeds. Although they will also produce sprouts, their innate advantages make these more plump seeds more advantageous. This is like a person's growth. Their innate advantages will make them stronger. How could the others not understand such an analogy? However, it was also because they understood that they were even more shocked by what Zhang Feng had done. After all, why did no one know about such a simple thing for thousands of years? Ouyangsun asked just like that. Zhang Feng smiled and said, "It's not that no one has made it before. I remember that there was a sage who did it in the past. However, the aristocratic families did not want this thing to be made public, so they wanted to keep it for themselves. However, because of the war, this thing was slowly lost. It's like a wooden ox and a horse." Hearing this, everyone frowned and nodded. As Zhang Feng said, it was not that some things were not mentioned, but because of the benefits involved. Even if this thing was indeed feasible, in the face of powerful forces, this thing, the few of them could not help but sigh. At this time, they saw Zhang Feng use a millet to scoop up the floating seeds that were covered in plant ash and mud. Then, he asked Cheng Chumo to pile a large pile of plant ash and bran chaff on the side. Then, when the water was about to drip, Zhang Feng poured the seeds into the plant ash and bran chaff. This time, The others did not understand. However, Zhang Feng was one step ahead and said, "This method can ensure the moisture of the seeds and also prevent the worms underground from eating the seeds." Chapter 1286. On the other side, Li Shimin, after spending 2 envoys' worship ceremony, took the civil and military officials to enter the imperial plantation on Longsho Mountain. At this time, around the plantation, there were already red decorations, and the densely packed people were shouting crazily all around. After Li Shimin had fun with the people again, he personally pulled up his dragon robe and stepped into the farmland with Zhang Sun, Empress Li Yuan, and Li Chengqian. Many people used worship to fool the gods, but Li Shimin was different. He was really planting. After all, the Tang dynasty was really short of food at this time, and he wanted to set an example and let the people see. After a day of work, Li Shimin felt that his waist and legs were no longer his own. But when he looked at the fields, the things he made were simply terrible, but he still felt a sense of pride. Looking at the officials again, looking at the people in the farmland in the distance, Li Shimin had an impulse to hit people. But at this moment, Li Shimin suddenly saw Imperial Dr. Zhou in the crowd with a white thing in his mouth. He was slightly angry and waved his hand. "Imperial Dr. Zhou." Xiao Gizi could clearly feel the emperor's anger at this time, so he hurriedly called Imperial Dr. Zhou. Imperial Dr. Zhou was old, and the emperor's face was a little bad at this time. Imperial Dr. Zhou couldn't help but tremble in his heart, but he still respectfully came to Li Shimin's side. Li Shimin pointed to the thing in his mouth and said indifferently, "What is this thing in your mouth?" How could Imperial Dr. Zhou not know that the emperor was angry? He hurriedly bowed and said, answering back the emperor, "This is a mask. What I asked you is, at this time, what do you mean by bringing this thing? Mask? What is this thing?" Imperial Dr. Zhou really forgot about this matter. After parting with the Crown Prince yesterday, Imperial Dr. Zhou seriously studied this thing. Needless to say, the more he studied it, the more shocked Imperial Dr. Zhou was. For a moment he forgot to take it down. The most important thing was that the stench in the farmland and the smell of feces made him a little nauseous. He also wanted to try it and see if this thing was as magical as the Crown Prince said. But who knew that he forgot to take it down and was caught by the emperor? At this time, seeing the emperor's inquiry, Imperial Dr. Zhou also told Li Shimin the cause of the matter. Li Shimin couldn't help but be interested. Looking at the things in the mouths of the imperial doctors, he asked, "This thing, Xingqian, what do you say?" Li Shimin was a little bit angry. Originally, he knew about this thing. Logically speaking, it should have been sent to him as soon as possible. But now, this thing was actually in the imperial hospital. As the emperor, he didn't know about it at all. This made him a little unhappy. Li Chengqian also knew that the matter was serious and hurriedly said, "Imperial father, this son did indeed want to give the mask to Imperial father, Imperial mother, and Imperial grandfather last night, but in the end, because I had to prepare for today's matter as well as Feng Zi's matter, so I forgot. You are the Crown Prince. How can you forget such an important matter?" Li Shimin was a little angry. He didn't forget, he looked down on him. This was a kind of contempt. In his opinion, "Your Majesty, now is not the time to talk about this." Empress Xianxia tried to smooth things over. She glared at Li Chengqian and said, "Why aren't you offering the mask to your father?" "No," Li Chengqian couldn't help but say awkwardly. When Li Shimin heard this, he couldn't get angry. If he reprimanded the Crown Prince because of this thing outside, it would give him an excuse. He just waved his hand lightly and said, "Forget it, just remember next time." After sending Li Chengqian away, Li Shimin didn't mind that the mask had been used by Imperial Dr. Zhou. He played with it in his hand and asked, "What is this thing? Did Feng Zi make it?" Obviously, he was asking the Crown Prince. But Li Chengqian knew that he was in the wrong, so he ran into the officials and dug the ground. But it was like digging a tunnel. Li Shimin could only shake his head. Imperial Dr. Zhou looked around and saw that there was no one around, so he could only say, "Your Majesty, the matter of the mask was made by Prince Zhang 3 days ago." After that, this old minister shamelessly went to beg the Crown Prince and the young dukes. "I only got a dozen or so. Almost everyone in the imperial hospital is using this thing now." And as far as this old minister knows, the reason why the crown prince forgot about this matter is that he has been tinkering with this mask during this period of time and also at Chang and University. So, the crown prince forgot about this unintentionally. The main reason was that this cicada was too scarce. Moreover, Xianxia also wanted to do something. After he did it, he would report it to Li Shimin so that Li Shimin would look at him with new eyes. But Xianxia didn't know what to say. Because Imperial Dr. Zhou had done Xianxia a favor, he praised Xianxia in front of the retired emperor, and the empress. Li Shimin couldn't say anything. He just sighed helplessly and said, "Such a big thing, as long as he says it, I will find someone to share his burden. Forget it, forget it. Seeing that he is doing a good thing for the country and the people this time, I won't make it difficult for him. But you tell the crown prince that this matter can't happen a second time." This minister obeys. Chapter 1287. The autumn seed heaven worshipping ceremony finally came to an end when the sun set in the west. When Li Shimin and the others returned to Taiji Palace, it was already time to light the lanterns. After they bathed and changed their clothes, Li Shimin summoned Xianxia, who was about to take the opportunity to sneak out. Li Shimin looked at Xianxia for a long time. When Xianxia was about to collapse, Li Shimin said faintly, "I know what you think and your personality. Do you know why I let you learn from Zhang Feng?" "Your son knows." Li Shimin smiled and said, "Then tell me." Xianxia didn't know what Li Shimin was thinking. Ever since he followed Zhang Feng, Li Shimin rarely talked to Xianxia. After all, how could Li Shimin not know Xianxia's cunning mind? He was timid, suspicious, and more importantly, indecisive. He could see these from Xianxia since he was young. Li Shimin had his own plans as to why he only said it now. Looking at Xianxia, Li Shimin patted the soft couch beside him and said, "It seems that we father and son have not had a serious talk for almost a year, right?" Hearing this, Xianxia hurriedly sat beside Li Shimin obediently. However, Li Shimin looked at Xianxia's actions and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. "You have indeed learned some skills during this time, but what I want you to learn the most is Zhang Feng's confidence in controlling everything, as well as his way of dealing with things without being alarmed. However, in this year, tell me, what is the use of this mask, and what is the phosphate fertilizer you guys tinkered with?" Li Shimin couldn't bear to continue speaking. After all, if he spoke too harshly, Xianxia's suspicion would increase. If he spoke too lightly, it wouldn't be good. In any case, Li Shimin felt a headache whenever he looked at Xianxia. None of them were free and easy like a man. In the end, Li Shimin could only change the topic. However, Xianxia did not think this way. He thought that his father was very dissatisfied with his actions during this period of time and began to worry deeply. Li Shimin patted Xianxia's shoulder and said, "We are very satisfied with what you have done during this period of time. Learn more from Zhang Feng about how to deal with people, as well as his attitude. This will always be good for you." After talking with Xianxia for half a day, Li Shimin also lost the desire to continue the conversation due to the deep worry emitted by Xianxia. He waved his hand and said, "What's going on with this mask? Also, what about the phosphate fertilizer? Can it be used in the autumn planting?" Seeing Li Shimin change the topic, Xianxia also heaved a sigh of relief. Replying to father, "This mask is the key to solving phosphorus poisoning. This son and others have been using this thing during this period of time. The effect is very magical. Originally, this son planned to give this thing to father when I got it last time, but on the way, I happened to meet Imperial Dr. Zhou who came to check my pulse. Then this son prepared to give it to Imperial Dr. Zhou first and let him use it in his daily diagnosis." When Li Shimin heard this, his eyes couldn't help but light up. This method is indeed possible. Then what happened next? We know that the cicada is extremely rare. How did you deal with this matter? Use white paper. Xianxia saw Li Shimin finally show a rare smile. He didn't know that just now, Li Shimin already knew about this. He said what Zhang Feng said about using multiple layers of thin white paper to replace the cicada. Li Shimin couldn't help but widen his eyes. In that case, this mask has basically become popular in Chang and city now. Xianxia shook his head and said, replying to father, this matter has not yet become widespread. For the time being, most of the doctors in Chang and city have been put to use. Furthermore, I have also found a few talented people from White Deer Academy to impart the most basic knowledge of physiology and hygiene to these doctors. Even the Imperial Hospital has already taken physiological and health knowledge as a course. Really? Li Shimin's eyes lit up. He really didn't expect it to be like this. Li Qingqian nodded. Indeed, and as long as the doctors have used it and learned physiological and health knowledge, they basically used it in their daily diagnosis during this period of time. The effect is naturally very good. Moreover, this son has already printed hundreds of copies of the medical and health knowledge manual set up by Fengzi. The price of each copy is basically 100 taels of silver. Li Shimin's blood boiled when he heard this. This thing was really a good thing. He had seen that thing before, and he saw Zhang Feng use it on Niu Jianhu's leg with his own eyes. He also wanted to use such a magical thing in the entire Tang dynasty, but he didn't know how to say it. However, he didn't expect the crown prince to be one step ahead of him and think of it. This also seemed to be a kind of progress, right? Li Shimin nodded and said, not bad. Qian has made a lot of progress to be able to think of this step. I am very happy. Quickly tell me about the phosphor fertilizer. Yes. Li Qingqian hadn't received Li Shimin's approval for a long time. At this time, hearing his father's praise, he couldn't help but feel a little smug. He excitedly told the whole story in full detail. Li Shimin's eyebrows didn't relax as he listened. After Li Qingqian finished, Li Shimin almost wanted to go and see Zhang Feng's masterpiece and that magical thing on the spot. It seems that this son hasn't seen this kind of new thing for a long time. Go up the mountain with me tomorrow. Hearing this, Li Qingqian hurriedly said, Father, Fengzi is now at Chang and University. Haha, do you think Fengzi is so easy to fool? Believe it or not, this kid must be on the mountain right now. Chapter 1288. The next morning. After the morning assembly, Li Shimin and Li Qingqian hurriedly slipped out of the palace. Sure enough, when the two arrived at Chang and University, they saw a big lock on the gate of Chang and University. However, this did not hinder the bustling scene. Originally, the entrance of Chang and University was not part of the downtown area, nor did it belong to the eastern and western markets. It was located at the corner of the western and eastern markets. It was originally sparsely populated, but at this time, it was full of people. Everyone stuck their heads out and looked at Li Shimin's carriage coming from afar. When the crowd saw Li Qingqian and Li Shimin, they were happy at first, but when they did not see Zhang Feng, they could not help but feel disappointed. Li Shimin was a little surprised. Looking at these people, he could not help but be interested. Looking at an old man, he held a fist and palm salute and said, Sir, this is Chang and University. What are you doing here? The old man looked at Li Shimin and then at Li Qingqian and asked suspiciously, Are you sure you don't know? Li Shimin shook his head. The old man pointed at Li Qingqian and said, This is your son, right? Li Shimin nodded. The old man rolled his eyes and said, Since he's your son, you don't know what's going on here? Are you playing with the old man? Li Shimin looked at Li Qingqian and asked, What's going on here? Li Qingqian was confused. He really did not know what was going on. He hurriedly asked, Sir, what's the meaning of this? Although I'm a student here, I don't know what's going on here. The argument here attracted a lot of people. Young sir, are you studying at Chang and University? Do you know about the mask? Little sir, we're here for this mask and the medical book. If you see Dean Zhang Feng, please put in a good word for us and beg him to part with it. As they spoke, everyone gave Li Qingqian a meaningful glance and stuffed copper coins into his arms and sleeves. Some of the copper coins even poked out from his chest. Li Qingqian and Li Shimin stared blankly. What kind of operation was that? Is this thing so popular? Li Shimin could not believe it. At this time, Xiao Gizi, who was following Li Shimin, saw this and hurriedly went forward to ask, Everyone, my young master really didn't know about this matter. I'll have to trouble everyone, what is going on? Seeing Li Shimin and Li Qingqian's expressions, it seemed like they really didn't know. Only then did they ask suspiciously, You guys really don't know? Li Chengqian shook his head helplessly and said, "If we knew, we wouldn't ask again." Hearing this, everyone began to talk about the benefits of the mask and the medical book. It was only now that Li Shimin realized that the medical book had become an item that was hard to come by in Chang and city. Li Shimin didn't stay any longer. After seeing such a scene with Li Chengqian, how could he stay any longer? He hurriedly got into the sedan chair and headed straight for Shao Mountain. Meanwhile, on Shao Mountain, Zhang Feng had no choice but to temporarily move the laboratory to Elder Gao's building. After all, although the smell here was a little pungent, with the help of the mask, it seemed to be bearable. In addition, there were few people here and they were in the hinterland of White Deer College. There was no need to worry about the degree of secrecy and safety. In the end, Zhang Feng thought about it and decided to move the phosphate fertilizer experiment site here. After all, in the eyes of Yu Shernan and the others, this thing was too important to the Tang dynasty. Although they did not know whether this thing had any magical effects, Yu Shernan did not allow Zhang Feng to go down the mountain for the selection of seeds. Instead, he gave the dozens of acres of land in the hatchery to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng could only suck in a breath of cold air when he saw this. At this moment, in Yu Shernan's villa, Zhang Feng was like a little wife who had been bullied, groaning and groaning. Even Xue Ji could not stand it anymore. He smiled helplessly and said, "Boy, this is a big deal. If you can really make this thing, then you are really awesome. Don't you know that? We don't need you to cultivate the fields on the mountain, but we do need you to screen out the seeds for him. Whether it's really as you say, or if you're just bragging, we'll be able to tell at a glance." Zhang Feng spread his hands helplessly and said, "Mr. Tong, I still have big things to do. You see, the steel business and the textile factory are still in a mess. In addition, everything in my laboratory is in Chang and University. Even if I want to stay on the mountain..." Xue Ji smiled and said casually, "Don't worry. Last night, we brought everything you have in Chang and University, including your half a cigarette. They are now in the room in the Gray Building." The Gray Building was the general name of the building where Old Gao lived. The first floor was the pig farm and observation point. The second floor was the bedroom. But at this time, except for Old Gao, no one lived there. Yu Shernan and the others asked Old Gao to come out and prepared to use the second floor as a laboratory and classroom, but Old Gao refused. Old Gao had no choice but to live in a small room, which was the small room where Ma Zhou once lived. And all the other rooms were connected. It became a secret laboratory on the mountain. No one would have thought that a top-notch laboratory would be built on top of a pigsty, right? Chapter 1289. In the end, Zhang Feng had no choice but to give in. In order to prevent Zhang Feng from being lazy, Yu Shernan even invited Jingshu back to the mountain. This made Zhang Feng even more speechless. Don't they need people at home? Lao Tzu's family is so rich that it can rival a country's wealth. You can rest assured, but I can't. However, when he saw the big box of land deeds, Zhang Feng shut up. Jingshu did not know who told her that all the money was used to buy thousands of acres of fertile land. This almost angered Zhang Feng to death. After asking, he found out that it was a butler named Du Ziding. Zhang Feng was so angry that he pulled out a small dagger from his waist and wanted to go down the mountain. No one could stop him. Prodigal. How is this a damn butler? I don't care. In this era, land was the most worthless. Buying land at this time was simply throwing money away. However, Sun Simiao laughed when he heard about it. "Kid, do you know where that land is?" How would Zhang Feng know where the land in the box of land deeds was? Sun Simiao picked up a few land deeds and looked at them. Then, he said in amazement, "This land is fertile land. It's in Lantian County. It's equivalent to the entire land from our Shao Mountain to Erpi Ridge." Hearing that, Zhang Feng shut up. He knew about this place, and he had wanted to buy it for a long time. However, he only told Jingshu. He did not have the money at that time. But now that he had the money, how could he waste it like this? Although he had bought the land, it was equivalent to giving Zhang Feng the green light to connect the two industries from here to the coal mine. However, this was money. "Dr. Sun, I understand what you mean, but I'm afraid of being poor. How good would it be to use this money to do something else? Why buy so much land?" Sun Simiao spread out his hands and said, "Kid, it's too late for you to regret now. We've already bought the land, and isn't this area suitable for growing wheat? Maybe if you work hard this year, you won't even be able to fit all the food in all the rooms in your Zhang residence next year." Zhang Feng sighed. For the time being, there was nothing he could do. Moreover, he only dared to say these things behind Jingshu's back. What if Xiaoning found out and thought too much? What if she ran away in anger? Wouldn't that be a huge loss of face? In the end, Zhang Feng could only pinch his nose and accept it. However, Zhang Feng knew that these old things must have done something. Otherwise, it was impossible for Jingshu not to discuss it with him. However, he didn't have any evidence at the moment, so he could only feel resentful. He acted as if nothing had happened. There was no running away from the land at this time. Zhang Feng didn't plan to grow wheat. He really didn't have the time. Zhang Feng could only return to the villa dejectedly. Seeing Jingshu happily sorting out the land deeds, Zhang Feng couldn't help but be stunned. When Jingshu saw Zhang Feng come in, she said embarrassedly, "I didn't discuss it with you. You won't blame me, right?" Could Zhang Feng blame her? He wouldn't dare to, even if he was beaten to death. Zhang Feng hugged Jingshu tightly. If it weren't for steamed buns staring at him covetously, he would have done it on the spot. He said lightly, "How could I? But you've helped me a lot." Jingshu didn't understand and asked in surprise, "Isn't the land used to grow food?" Zhang Feng scratched Jingshu's nose and said, "Who said that it can only grow food? I have a great use for this land." Use. At this moment, Li Shimin's voice sounded faintly at the door. Jingshu was so shocked that her face turned red. She hurriedly carried steamed bun up to the second floor. Zhang Feng touched his nose and looked at Lao Li and Li Qingqian. He smiled helplessly and said, "Lao Li, I've really been screwed over by you and your father this time." Li Shimin didn't understand what Zhang Feng meant. He hurriedly asked, "What do you mean?" "Look at this grand sacrificial ceremony. Originally, I wanted to go and broaden my horizons. Most importantly, I wanted to see what the emperor looked like. But you guys not only hid such an important matter from me, you even let that brat Li Gong go in my place. Fortunately, nothing happened. If something had happened, it would have been a big deal." Li Shimin didn't understand what Zhang Feng meant. And this matter was indeed authorized by him. He didn't allow Zhang Feng to go. It was better not to let him know about this matter. That was why the heaven-worshipping ceremony last time, which was supposed to be paraded through the streets, and the farming held outside Chang, in city, were directly held in the imperial farm on Mount Longsho. At this time, seeing Zhang Feng like this, Li Shimin asked, "Why are you so nervous? Can't you just do what Mr. Bo Shi and the others do? The laws of the Tang dynasty clearly state that great Confucian scholars don't need to participate, right? And I also heard that on that day, you went barefoot into battle, setting a precedent for all the Confucians of the Great Tang. Moreover, in front of more than 3,000 students, you berated the scholars of the world for being pretentious?" Zhang Feng shouted that he was wronged. "When did I say that they were pretentious?" Li Shimin smiled and didn't say anything. In any case, he had indeed heard such words. He didn't know who spread it. At this time, Li Shimin also asked people to do their best to find this person. Zhang Feng couldn't be bothered to argue with Li Shimin here. After all, nothing major had happened at this time, and they came at the right time. If someone came to ask for responsibility, wouldn't that be a ready-made target for him to shift the blame to? Chapter 1290. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng swept away his previous anger and welcomed the two with a smile. Come. Take a seat. You, go and prepare the food and wine." Hearing this, Shiva's legs went soft and he almost stumbled. But he still hurried to prepare the food and wine. Li Shimin, on the other hand, was a little alarmed. This brat seemed to be a little too enthusiastic at this time. But he couldn't say it. After all, he still had things to ask Zhang Feng. After the food and wine were served, Zhang Feng asked, "How was the sacrificial ceremony this time? How was it? What did he mean?" Li Shimin and Li Qingqian were stunned. Li Qingqian's eyes turned and he said, "It was okay. This time, it was a big event. Basically, all the officials and aristocratic families that could come came. Zhang Feng waved his hand and asked, "What I mean is, did you see the emperor?" "I saw him?" Li Qingqian had a bad feeling. Li Shimon's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Zhang Feng asked again, "Then tell me, what does the emperor look like?" This was what Zhang Feng was most concerned about. In the history books, Li Shimon's appearance always gave people a sense of mystery. But Zhang Feng didn't think that Li Shimon could look so ordinary. Take old Li, who was sitting opposite him, as an example. Although he looked similar to Li Shimon in the portrait and was quite strong, Lao Li's body and the aura on his face were 100 times stronger than in the portrait. Was the person in the portrait really Li Shimon, the great Khan of heaven? That would be a strange thing. Li Shimon didn't know that Zhang Feng would ask such a question. Li Chengqian was so nervous that his hand holding the wine cup was trembling. He asked him to tell him what his father looked like. What should he say? Just as Li Chengqian was hesitating, Zhang Feng also noticed Li Chengqian's trembling hand. He asked curiously, "Hey, what happened to your hand? Isn't it just asking you what the emperor looks like? Do you have to be so agitated? Could it be that your majesty—" Cough cough, Feng Zi, aren't you afraid of losing your head by talking about his majesty like this? Li Shimon coughed and asked with a smile. Instead, Zhang Feng rolled his eyes at him. "Decapitate?" Zhang Feng snorted and said, "If we're talking about heads, you, Lao Li, have to be the first. At first, I didn't want to tell you, but you kept pestering me. Now, I just want to ask what the emperor looks like, and you want to tell me to lose my head?" Li Shimon's face stiffened. He chuckled and said, "Actually, I also went. The emperor must have the face of the son of heaven. I only saw him from afar, red phoenix eyes, sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes." Zhang Feng had a headache. According to what Lao Li said, was he still a human? Which King novel did he copy this from? Red phoenix eyes? Sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes? Are you kidding me? Zhang Feng directly stopped him and said, "Come on, if you didn't see it, just say that you didn't see it. Is it necessary? If this really reaches the emperor's ears, I think you'll be the first to be cut into pieces." Li Shimon smiled embarrassedly. "Isn't this what you asked me to say? You also know that when we see the emperor, how can we raise our heads and look directly at his face?" Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't speak, Li Shimon hurriedly said, "Let's not talk about the emperor. Kid, aren't you dealing with phosphate fertilizer in Chang and University? What's wrong? Why did you suddenly come up the mountain?" It was fine if Li Shimon didn't say it, but when he said it, Zhang Feng couldn't help but sigh and said, "Alas! Isn't it because of you? If you had told me, I wouldn't have come up the mountain." But the phosphate fertilizer experiment can be carried out as usual. As for the other things, I can only go down the mountain after this incident passes. Li Shimon nodded. He wanted to laugh. But he also knew Zhang Feng's temper. At this time, if he dared to laugh, Zhang Feng might be angry. He shook his head slightly and said, "On the way here, and during the sacrifice to heaven, I saw a magical thing. The mask they talked about, was it you who made it? Someone wore it during the sacrifice to heaven?" Zhang Feng was a little surprised and hurriedly asked, "Tell me, who wore it?" Zhang Feng really did not expect that there would actually be people who would wear this thing. Li Chengqian whispered, "The chief imperial physician of the Imperial Institute of Medicine, a third-rank official in the imperial court, Zhou Hongru, Imperial Physician Zhou." Zhang Feng was confused. "Logically speaking, I didn't give this thing to them. Could it be you, kid?" Zhang Feng instantly thought of it. Before this, Li Chengqian had begged for the manufacturing method of this thing, saying that he would make it. Could it be that he was the one who made this thing? Seeing that Zhang Feng had been staring at him, Li Chengqian weakly said, "I was the one who caused it. The last time we went out for a stroll, didn't we bump into Imperial Physician Zhou? That old guy kept pestering me and I wanted it. Moreover, he was a third-rank official. I couldn't afford to offend him, so I told him about this mask and the medical and hygiene standards." After that, Li Chengqian immediately raised his hands and said, "I swear, I didn't mention a word about the phosphate fertilizer. I just wanted to show off about the medical and hygiene standards. Who knew that this old guy didn't play by the rules? Now the whole of Chang'an knows about it." Zhang Feng was in a bad mood. He stared at Li Chengqian and said, "What did you say?" Chapter 1291. Zhang Feng didn't expect this kid to be so good at bragging. However, there was no harm in telling others about this. Instead, it would make White Deer College's reputation soar. Why didn't I think of that? Zhang Feng looked Li Chengqian up and down and said, "Tis key. Kid, I didn't see it. You haven't learned other skills, but you've learned quite well when it comes to improvising." Li Chengqian trembled with excitement when he heard Zhang Feng praise him. This was the first time Zhang Feng had praised him like that. Most importantly, it was in front of Lao Tzu. This honor was 100 times better than being flattered by others all day long. Li Shimin was also slightly surprised. In his opinion, this should be a very normal thing. However, when it came to Zhang Feng, it became a very good thing. He couldn't help but ask suspiciously, "Fengzi, is what you said true? I thought this kid didn't learn anything other than causing trouble after being with you for so long. I was even scolded by him last night." Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Lao Li, you're changing speed. Do you really want your kid to learn all my skills before you're satisfied?" Li Chengqian is indeed a little impatient. However, look at this. I originally gave 4 people a task, but he wants to learn it alone. Do you think it's simple? Li Chengqian was very excited. He couldn't be any more excited. He originally thought that he was a slow learner. Moreover, for some reason he always sighed. However, when he heard Zhang Feng's words, Li Chengqian was so excited that he almost hugged Zhang Feng and kissed him. What a good person. If Li Shimin wasn't here, Li Chengqian really would have forcefully brought Zhang Feng to Yanlai restaurant and booked the entire place for him. But just as Li Chengqian was indescribably excited, Zhang Feng's words almost knocked him to the bottom of the valley. As Zhang Feng spoke, he sighed and said, "It's just a pity that he didn't learn anything that he should learn, but he did learn a lot of unorthodox methods." Li Chengqian, Li Shimin swept a glance at Li Chengqian and asked, "But what bad things did this kid do again?" Zhang Feng glanced at Li Chengqian, who was in high spirits and was suddenly beaten down. He found it a little funny, but this kid wasn't an ordinary person. He got carried away easily, so Zhang Feng still said, "Nothing bad, it's just Lao Li." Zhang Feng pulled Li Shimin aside and pointed to his head. "There's something wrong with your son here." This time, Li Chengqian exploded. Just as he was about to speak, Li Shimin glared at him and he shut his mouth. Li Shimin was a little unhappy. He knew best what was wrong with his son, but Zhang Feng actually said that there was something wrong with Li Chengqian's head, and he even said it in front of him. This inevitably made Li Shimin a little unhappy. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at Li Shimin with a smile and said, "Think about it. He did a good job with medical and hygiene, but this mask, why didn't he give it to you first? Am I right? This is a little too self-centered when it comes to dealing with people. He wants to show off. To put it bluntly, he wants to show off. But Li Chengqian, have you thought about it? Your idea is very good, but what will Lao Tzu think when he sees this thing?" This, Li Chengqian couldn't help but be stunned. At this time, Zhang Feng said again, "Do you think I can't tell that although you don't say anything every time, you want to do everything better than others, faster and more perfectly than others? Take mathematics for example, as well as those things that you learn every day. But do you know that everyone's energy is limited? The reason I let you learn everything is because you remember what I said to you when I agreed to teach you?" At this time, Li Shimin understood. He was a little expectant, but his expression turned cold. He flicked his sleeves and sat down, not even looking at Li Chengqian. At this time, when Li Chengqian saw Li Shimin's reaction, his face turned pale. He didn't know if Li Shimin was really angry or what. But it seemed that he was really disappointed. Disappointed in the crown prince. Then he thought about Qin Ke. Li Chengqian's emotions began to surge involuntarily. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't stop scolding Li Chengqian. He knew Li Chengqian's character. If he wanted to show off too much, it would be too pretentious. Every time he saw Li Chengqian gave him the feeling that he was prepared for him in advance. Every time, it was so perfect. But it was this discomfort that, over time, made Zhang Feng realize that Li Chengqian was unreal. This time, Zhang Feng wanted to talk about Li Qingqian's shortcomings in front of Li Shimin and Li Qingqian because he wanted to give Li Qingqian a wake-up call. If he could wake up, or if he realized his mistake, then it would be perfect. But if he couldn't, then Zhang Feng could only tell Li Qingqian about it. Chapter 1292. Zhang Feng didn't like to gossip behind other people's backs. However, as a brother, he had the obligation to show him all the bad things about his brother. Moreover, Lao Li and Li Gan were Zhang Feng's most indispensable brothers. He cherished all of this. At this moment, Zhang Feng sighed and handed the two of them a cigarette. Then, he personally lit one for Li Qingqian and patted his shoulder. Li Gan, do you still remember what I said that night in the tavern? How could Li Qingqian forget? He nodded bitterly and said, I remember. You said that you would make me the best merchant. Zhang Feng patted Li Qingqian's shoulder and said, Then, do you think that as an excellent manager and merchant, he needs to do everything himself? This time, Li Qingqian was completely stumped. He didn't know what Zhang Feng meant by this. However, he knew that the merchant skills that Zhang Feng spoke of could be used in the operation of the empire. However, if he didn't understand this, how could he control everything? Li Shimin somewhat agreed with Zhang Feng's words. Feng Zi is right. Look at your Lao Tzu. You should understand Feng Zi's painstaking efforts now, right? Li Shimin glanced at Zhang Feng and said again, When I agreed to let you follow Feng Zi, I didn't expect you to learn much. However, there is one thing that you must learn. Father has watched you grow up since you were young. Moreover, you have traveled extensively for so many years. However, you are naturally weak, timid, and indecisive. However, you are also competitive in everything. This is a good thing, but it is also a drawback. Just as Feng Zi said, a manager only needs to make a decision and not blindly compete with the people under him. I know that you treat Tang Yo and the others as true brothers. This is a good thing for our Lao Li family's business. However, if you act like you want to compete with them in everything, do you think they will do that? What do you think? Li Qingqian. Li Qingqian was truly dumbfounded at this moment. He had always been opposed by many voices in the imperial court. Moreover, his imperial father's achievements were too dazzling, so he was very anxious to show off and prove himself. However, at this moment, he suddenly had a trace of doubt. Was it really wrong for me to do this? Li Shimin and Zhang Feng glanced at each other. Seeing Li Qingqian's current state, they smiled faintly. Zhang Feng shook his head and said again, It's good to be competitive, but look at the business I'm working with you. Have I ever asked about it? Think about it. If I still spare no effort to go to Chang and Hotel, or the paper mill, or the table salt, and so on, what will happen? The people under me don't know who to listen to, nor do they know what to do. The most important thing is that people's hearts will scatter, and our hearts will also crack. This is the most fatal thing. When you have nothing to do, I suggest that you observe the ant's nest. Go and see how the ants do it, and you'll understand. However, at this time, I only have 4 words for you. As he spoke, Zhang Feng found a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Li Shimin also strolled to Zhang Feng's side. He stuck his head out to look at Zhang Feng, wanting to see what this brat wanted to say. However, he saw that Zhang Feng's brush was dipped in ink, and he didn't stop writing 4 words on the paper. Rare confusion. Rare confusion? Li Shimin couldn't help but be a little surprised. Zhang Feng nodded and said, Yes. Lao Li, do you still remember the story I told you before? Li Shimin was a little confused. This brat had said too many things. How could he remember? Zhang Feng sighed and said, It's the story of the foreign emperor, He Zhongtang, and Grand Secretary Ji that I told you before. When Li Shimin heard this, he remembered this matter. Zhang Feng told the story again. It was mainly for Li Qingqian. At this moment, Li Qingqian was confused. Looking at those 4 words, and then recalling the story Zhang Feng told him, he couldn't help but slowly freeze on the spot. Li Shimin looked at the dejected Li Qingqian and stared at Zhang Feng worriedly. I say, Feng Zi, isn't this a little too much? Zhang Feng glanced at Li Qingqian and pulled Li Shimin out of the villa. He sat in the villa's garden and said faintly, Give him some time. This brat is spoiled. If he can be taught a lesson this time, Then I have to congratulate you, Lao Li. Li Shimin was stunned, but smiled and said, "Congratulate me for what?" Zhang Feng, this brat, had too many ideas. He didn't even know what Zhang Feng was up to. At this moment, hearing Zhang Feng say this, Li Shimin couldn't help but be a little worried. After all, Li Chengqian was the crown prince. Not to mention 10,000, but just in case. If Li Chengqian said something stupid, then wouldn't it be a big loss of face? Moreover, he was his son. Although he usually scolded him, he had never been so harsh. He was a little worried. If Li Chengqian couldn't resist, what would happen? Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder and said speechlessly, "This is all because you spoiled him. He should have understood these things long ago. A gentleman is magnanimous, but..." Sigh.